Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome today for a very special day. The first symposium actually in the southeast that's dedicated to the work that's being done with people with intellectual disabilities in the southeast, and it's connected to a partnership, a very special partnership. Oh, you can't hear back here. Is the microphone on?
It's not a room mic, it's only...
Oh, it's just for the stream. Okay, so I'll speak louder. So it's a very special partnership between Waterford Institute of Technology, St John Fisher College, the Golisano Foundation in the establishment of the Golisano Institute for Developmental and Intellectual Disability Nursing in the United States. And this is a very groundbreaking event in terms of the future of nursing in the United States and nursing practice, and more importantly for the lives of people with intellectual disabilities in America. And we're very proud to be partnering our very good friends in St John Fisher and with Golisano. And also involved in this initiative are the Special Olympics as well. And we hope to be developing and deepening that partnership through various initiatives that we are taking. I should also mention this partnership will not just be confined to Ireland. We tend to internationalise it. And in relation to that, we have 2 international visitors who will be going forward with us in terms of this partnership. And we've got Professor Maida Pankia from the University of Maribor with us, and she's sitting next to Professor Kuni Miner, and Dr. Wolfgang Ruf, who is from the Sports University in Berlin, and in particular he's getting involved in the area of the Special Olympics, because I think it's 2023 the Special Olympics are being held in Germany. I just want to say a little bit about the event, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Sara Kennedy to address you. And by the way, I should have introduced myself, shouldn't I? So I'm John Wells. I'm head of the School of Health Sciences in WIT. So you will see that we will have a series of speakers throughout the day, people who are from our former students of our CSIL program, and telling you about the impact that program made upon them. A number of people working within practice, a number of academic staff also who've made significant contributions to practice. And there are 3 sessions on the day. The first session starts around about 10:30, the second at 12, leading up to lunch, and we will be signing the Memorandum of Understanding during the beginning of lunch. And then we have the afternoon session, which kicks off with Professor John Nolan and his work around supplementation. And then we have the closing event, and that is going to be done by Professor Diane Cooney-Miner and Professor Pankia. So Diane will be introducing Professor Pankia to you at the closing event, and Professor Pankia will be talking a little bit about intellectual disability services and ID nursing in Slovenia. And I've happened to read some of the slides that she presented, and there's some really interesting things about ID services and ID nursing in Slovenia that I thought were fascinating that she raised. So she will be closing the event with a description of nursing in ID and the services they have in Slovenia. So without more further ado, there's one other thing I need to say. So throughout the day, photographs will be taken, and we live, of course, in the era of GDPR. So if you don't wish your photograph to be taken, please let George know, or don't stand in any line of sight in relation to a camera, so that you're not photographed. The other thing to say, we are being live streamed today as well. Okay, so having done that faltering introduction, I'd like to introduce a much smoother operator, Dr. Sara Kennedy, to say a few words.
So good morning, everybody, and I am delighted to see you all here, and thank you very much for coming. I just want to talk, I'm not going to keep you because we have a really, really fascinating day ahead of you, but I just want us all to focus our minds a little bit on why we're here and how we're here today. And I know for you and for me, I think today in this beautiful room with the nice views that we have, it gives us an opportunity just to think about what we're doing and how we can do it better. So what we want to show you today is what we have done, and that is peppered and it is ingrained with where we want to go. We have big dreams and we have big ambitions to improve the lives of those with an intellectual disability and their families in our community. And we know we can make a change, and we know we have made changes. So that's what we're showing you. But in this country of ours today, we don't really, we have a government in waiting, and one of the slogans of previous governments was a little done, a lot more to do. And so I'm going to borrow that phrase today and just ask you maybe just to concentrate on what it is that we can do for you, what it is we can help you with, how we can make things better. And what better way to start off the morning than to look at what some of our students are currently doing. And so we have a lovely lineup for you. The little bit of housekeeping kind of that I need to really tell you about is that there is a toilet just outside the door. It's for either sex. At the end of the long corridor to the right, there's another toilet down there, and downstairs there are other toilets. So feel free to get up and go as you need to during the morning. There's some water there. I thought maybe there was more coming, but if there's more at the end. So if you need a glass of water, just give me a nod and I'll bring you a glass, or down at the end. We're going to have coffee and a chance to network and to talk. And we've peppered the day with lots of opportunities for us to talk to each other, because we know that's also how we make changes. We don't make changes if we sit in our silos and don't network. So there's lots of interesting people here today for you to talk to, and lots of opportunities over nice food and tea and coffee. So make the most of those opportunities and enjoy the day. The fire escape, go down the stairs just beside the lift. Don't use the lift, and out the front door. Anything else? Yeah, we said about please tweet anybody who's active on social media. Let's get the word out there that what we're doing in the southeast in the ID community is worth sitting up and taking notice. So we'll kick off the morning's proceedings. I just quickly might ask Professor Diane Cooney-Minor, could she say hello to you all and just give you a little bit of the genesis of the background to this, if that's okay.
Sarah?
If you'd like to.
Thank you. Coming this way. Yeah.
We needed an adapter. If anybody brought one in their handbag, it'd be great.
I appreciate that, because I took my glasses off on my way up here, right? So good morning to all of you. My name is Diane Cooney-Minor. I'm from St. John Fisher College in Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York is the sister city to Waterford. And so some years ago, more than we'd like to remember, Professor John Wells and I found each other out of an interest in sharing our nursing histories and backgrounds and interest across the pond, embedded, I'm going to say, in the Sister Cities Institute. And in learning about education of nurses in Rochester, in Ireland, comparing it to how we do this same important work in Rochester, we found so many things that we shared, as well as so many additional opportunities we had to build on our passion for this work, our passion for our patients, our interest in our students, as well as moving the profession forward. So a couple of years ago, I had a particular idea that was very much a part of what the work that I recognize all of you do here. And that, you know, in the States, our approach to nursing education is we all enter as generalists, where you enter as specialist. and your particular identification of the very special population that we serve with intellectual disabilities is something that we in the States, need to embrace and move forward. So I had a great opportunity to share that with my colleague and friend, Ann Costello, who's here, from the Golisano Foundation. She's the Chief Executive Officer, and share with her some of my ideas about enriching the experience of nurses in the United States and how WIT could be a partner. And that led to a very generous gift from the Golisano Foundation and Mr. Thomas Golisano to establish the Golisano Institute of Developmental Disabilities Nursing in Rochester, a center of excellence in developmental disability care, but moving forward with recognizing the critical, important role that nurses play, and WIT would be a partner with us in that. And we've begun this work. Technology has allowed Mary, Reedy, and Sinead to be with us every couple of weeks over Zoom technology, and we're working on building curriculum, building avatars, building relationships, thinking forward on new opportunities for enhancing the work and building networks of excellence across the globe. We have a wonderful partner in Special Olympics International. I'm hoping Mary Davis will be here momentarily. You all hopefully know Mary Davis, who is a force, and in partnering with Mary Davis and working with enriching the lives of the athletes in Special Olympics, what role we play as healthcare providers. So I'm more than over the moon excited about this work, and every time I come together I think of new and additional things that we can do. I thank you all for being here today. I hope to have an opportunity to talk to all of you about your own experiences and the ideas that you might have to help us in our Institute's work as we move forward. So thanks again and all the best. And my name is Cooney, okay? So there's some Irish roots that just get deeper and more significant and important to me. So being here with you has an additional meaning too. So thanks again.
So we've got a fairly packed schedule for the day, and we're going to try and keep strictly to time. That's our intention. I think we've got a timer over there, haven't we? Yeah, so we're fully supported by the technology. So I'd like to introduce you first to our first speaker, and this, or speakers. It's Miss Shannon Maguire and Lorraine Dillon, who is the program lead for CSIL. So.
Haven't started the traffic light system yet, have you? One moment.
Traffic lights are going, but we're okay. They
One
can be
moment.
generous.
Okay, good morning. As John said, my name is Lorraine Dillon, and I'm a lecturer in intellectual disability nursing here in WIT. And from 2016 to 18, I was also co-lead in the CSIL programme. And so this really is Shannon's presentation, but I'm just going to start to give you a little bit more information about the CSIL. CSIL stands for Skills for Independent Living. Okay, and it was a collaboration between Dundalk and WIT. It began in WIT in around 2011, and we also ran it when Shannon was participant from 2016 to 18. There was a number of objectives of this particular programme, the main one being, providing the skills and knowledge and experience to people with an intellectual disability in the Southeast to enable them to integrate, to be included, and to also look at education at third level and employability. Some of the modules that were covered in this particular programme were communication, personal effectiveness, application of maths, which you all loved.
Yes,
I didn't like myself. Health and fitness, career preparation, work experience, to name but a few. Two of the most important aspects I found while leading this particular programme was, number one, the link to services. That was absolutely so pivotal. To have the support within services, to have support staff within services, and to have their connections and their ability to support the programme was brilliant. The other part that was very important was work experience. We found that to be able to kind of match the students to the particular work experience areas that they wanted to look at was great, and it meant that there was actually actions out of this particular programme, that it wasn't just a 2-year programme that was done and dusted and then they graduated and that was it. It was actually looking at what would the student like to do and trying to make sure that that inclusion was there for their future. My experience as co-programme lead, I taught on this particular programme for about 2 or 3 hours every week, and it was the 2 or 3 hours that I enjoyed the most. It was fantastic. They were a fantastic group of students. There was 12 students in total. We had great discussions and great debates about the future of disability services in Ireland and how we as a society need to change, not the person with a disability. So that's all I have to say, and I'm going to pass you on to Shannon, and I will get yours up for you actually. It's yours?
Yeah.
You can use that if you want. Okay. Right, this.
So my name is Shannon O'Fallon. So I have a couple of quotes that I really like. So one of them says, "Your disability is your opportunity." And one says, "Sometimes the things we can't change end up changing us." So as I said, my name is Shannon O'Fallon and I am 22 years old. I had a brain injury on the day I was born, which caused me to have cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and a mild learning difficulty. But my thing was, if I'm going to become disabled, I'm going to do it right. So, as a child, I always had a dream to go to college. I found out about a leadership course in WIT 2 days a month, where I met 2 guys that told me about the CIL course. Then I really looked into the CIL course. I got all the information and showed my mum and dad, and their response was, "Go for it." So I did send off application forms, and getting offered an interview was such a great feeling. On the day of the interview was nerve-wracking. My friend Anya brought me down, and even her nerves were a wreck. Getting a phone call that same day was amazing. I felt hope. I always wanted it to go to college, but I never knew that it would happen. I'll try. So after college, I loved to speak, and I wanted something of my own to speak to people and share my story. So I decided to open up my very own motivational speaking business. It's called Be Different, Be Inspired. I speak about life with a brain injury and go deep into it, so give the positives but also a little bit of the negatives too. I also enjoy motivating people in order to make their dream come true. You need family and friends that say I'm behind you 100%. My family and friends are amazing. They support me, encourage me and help make my dreams come true. Being disabled doesn't mean you can't, it means taking a different path. So this was the graduation, and I really enjoyed coming back and seeing the lads, and we had a really good day. So
The proudest day of your life.
yes, it was. So this is my life in pictures. So there's some pictures of me and friends and family, and then there's some quotes about life. So
Okay, is that it?
yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And if anybody wants to ask any more about the CSIL programme, or if they want, an actual copy of the programme, please come to me, and that will be fine. We can organise that. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
More. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Introduce our guest who just come?
Yes,
Absolutely. I think many of you will recognize this lovely woman who is joining us.
I'm not sure about that.
Yes. Alicia John Hodge. Dr. Rooney, would you come up so we can introduce?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm going to go. The first thing we're going to do is I would just really like just to thank Shannon, because Shannon, that was just simply amazing.
Inspiring, Shannon. Thank you.
And can I just say, Shannon, when you left WIT, it was a little bit duller after you went, because Shannon used to shout down at me, "Mrs. Doyle, are you going to make the tea?" She used to say to me. So, Shannon, well done on your new business and your new success, and we will follow that star as it rises, and I have no doubt it will.
I just want to take a second to introduce you all to my colleagues who have just joined us. We've been traveling Ireland since Sunday, meeting wonderful people and having many late nights. Right? Yeah. So they got a break and got to come a little bit later this morning. But I think you all know. This wonderful lady to my right, Mary Davis, the Chief Executive Officer of Special Olympics International, and to have her support and to work with, and to spend these few days traveling through Ireland talking about big ideas and all the wonderful things we can do in partnership with Special Olympics has been truly a great privilege. And then next to her is Dr. Alicia Bizzano, who is the Chief Health Officer, of Special Olympics. Dr. Bizzano comes to us a pediatrician, an MD, PhD, and an MPH pediatrics with long history great experience working with the DD population. And then, listen to me, I'm going to say this, Koch, Donnelly, how you make C-A-I-T, Koch, I will never figure out. Koch. Koch is with Special Olympics in Ireland. I'm doing great work on health promotion with the athletes. And then my colleague, by the way of Dublin, now in the University of Rochester, Dr. John Fox, head of the neuroscience department at the University of Rochester, coming back home to Dublin and seeing his family as well as traveling with us. And then finally, my boss. So give him a round of applause. This is Dr. Jerry Bruni, the president of St. John Fisher College, who is joining us in this work as well. So it's just means such a great deal for me to have us all here today and to begin to share and introduce you to all together coming to speak about the special work that we will do and continue to do. So thank you. So I think there's some chairs here. Okay.
So, our next speaker is Miss Olivia Cusack, the RNID's President's Prize recipient and nursing student. So, Olivia.
Thank you. So hello, my name is Olivia and I'm a second year student in Waterford doing intellectual disability nursing. So when I was in 6th year in school, I went to my career guidance teacher not knowing what to do and couldn't put my finger exactly on what it was I wanted to do. And it was through talking to me that she figured out that intellectual disability nursing was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with people and support people with intellectual disabilities of all ages to have the best quality of life in everything that they do. So why did I choose nursing at WIT? So when I was in 6th year, a representative of the college came to speak to us and he explained all the different support networks that were there in the college. So what really got me was the open door policy that WIT has, because in school I always would have struggled with work, so I was always bothering my teachers, so I'm always bothering my lecturers now. And so I really enjoyed that, and the priority for good housing for students, because it was my first time moving out of home, so that was a big thing for me. Was trying to find somewhere that I would enjoy living. And I also liked that Waterford was a smaller city, that moving from a small town to a city but Waterford is a smaller city, so that really struck me. So it all started when I was in transition year. I built up my teamwork, my leadership, my entrepreneur skills to try and get me to where I was today. So when I was in TY, myself and 3 other girls set up Coins for Crumlin. So Coins for Crumlin was a mini company where we made handmade hot chocolates, reindeer food and Santa scrolls, all done out of our parents' pockets and our own pocket money. We set up bucket collections and trying to raise as much money as possible, and all the money was donated to Our Lady's Children's Hospital in Crumlin. I had also done work for the Nina Special Summer Camp. So this year marks the 30th anniversary of the Nina Special Summer Camp. It's run for 6 weeks over the summer and it's voluntary led. All the funds raised for the camp, it's all done through bucket collections and just the hearts of good people It's ran by volunteers from the ages of 16 upwards. So I started doing that when I was in TY, when I had just turned 16. And children and young adults it runs from children and adults to 5 to 20 years of age, and camp activities include swimming, day trips, meditation, yoga and horse riding. So we help them with anything that they need throughout the day, and just be their friend and have as much fun as possible. So my journey from 6th year, when I heard about the President's Scholarship, was when the representative came to our school. He explained to me about the scholarship, well, to everyone, not just me, but about the scholarship. So the scholarship aims to support individuals who demonstrate the ability to make Irish society a better place and allow them to further their potential. So as I said, I wasn't very academic in school as much as I tried. So this was the first scholarship that I had ever heard of that aims to support people to do more on what they do than their brains, basically. So I had tried to meet the criteria for the scholarship by my volunteer work and through the mini company that we had set up. So I had to write a 300-word essay and submit exam results that was the first phase of the scholarship. And then phase 2, the application was assessed and candidates are shortlisted. I was then invited to WIT to present in front of a panel on why I thought I deserved the scholarship, and then I received my offer for my first course, which was intellectual disability nursing, in early August, before even getting my exam results. So it was a huge help for me. So that's me on the awards day. That's on my mantelpiece. There's on my mantelpiece. So how the scholarship has benefited me. So the scholarship has helped me in so many ways, between getting to meet like-minded people, talking at open days. It's just been so helpful for me. And the bursary, you get a bursary of 2,000 each year. So that has helped me and my parents especially, and the €1,000 towards student services each year. So that can be used on printing, which has just been so helpful towards all my college work so far. So the first year undergraduate program. So academic wise, we had studied anatomy and physiology, medication management, clinical skills, caring for people with intellectual disabilities, which gave us a broad overview of everything that we needed to know for first year for intellectual disability nursing. And then we had clinical placement, so 8 weeks of placement divided over the 2 semesters, which was great because it bridged theory to practice to learn essential skills needed to set the foundation. So we learned observational skills and communication, and it's everyone's favourite part of first year and all the years throughout. And social, so we had made new friends. I came from Tipperary to Waterford all by myself, so that was a huge jump for me. Making connections on clinical placement. I've met the most amazing nurses, most amazing just service users, everything. So it's just been all over good so far. So my plans for the future are, hopefully I'll be able to do an Erasmus in intellectual disabilities. I plan on doing the HRB summer scholarship. I hope to go on and do a postgraduate study in paediatric nursing, to be dual qualified in paediatric nursing and intellectual disabilities, and specialise in paediatrics and intellectual disabilities. That's me.
So we're doing very well for time, I must say. Our next speaker is Teresa Dowling, and Teresa Dowling is an MSc student on the Care Collaboration funding scheme.
Hey everybody. And there we go. So hello everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Professor Wells. My name, as John said, is Teresa Dowling. Can everybody hear me? At the back, good. So I'm going to talk to you today about advanced healthcare directives. I'm in the middle of a research project on this, and we're going to be looking at these for the purposes of today through the prism of the intellectual disability population. But important to say, I think, that there is relevance for each and every one of us sitting here and all our families as well. Okay, if I can figure out this device. Oh, great. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to take a look at what exactly is an advanced healthcare directive. We're also going to consider the notion of capacity and who exactly gets to decide when it's present or when it's absent. Okay. We're also going to have a look at the timing of what can be very sensitive and tricky decisions, okay? And also we're going to consider the notion of paternalism in the sense of doctor knows best, okay, and making decisions in the best interest of the person versus the patient or the person taking back their own autonomy over their decision making. And we're also going to have a look at some barriers and challenges and some general considerations for us as nurses going forward with this, okay? So what exactly is an advanced healthcare directive? Can I just take a quick show of hands? Who knows what these are generally? Okay, so not everybody. Okay, so that's about right. There's still a reasonably new and still emerging phenomenon for us here in Ireland, okay? They're sometimes called living wills, and that's because they're kind of like a will in that they're a document where you get to set out in advance any healthcare decisions or choices that you might have should an emergent situation happen or when the time comes, okay? There's actually a great version that the Irish Hospice Foundation have developed already called the Think Ahead form. I have a stack of these here if anybody cares to look through them later. And it's a really great template, but equally important to say that this hand scribbled version is absolutely fine so long as it is in writing and signed and witnessed, okay? The beauty of these documents is once they're made, they must be upheld, okay? And this is true even when family and loved ones essentially disapprove or disagree with the person's own decision, okay? And equally, if medical practitioners or nurses perceive your decision as unwise or as an eccentric one, your decision still stands, okay? So the ideal here is that we're making, and I mean everybody, we're making our advanced healthcare directives in a good time, okay, where there's full capacity for a time where possibly your capacity may be called into question at a later date, okay, and that is the ideal that we're looking at. So the legislation behind this is still pretty new. It's the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act. This was enacted, it was signed into law in 2015, but it has yet to be commenced, and I'll come back to that later. So capacity. What exactly is capacity, and who, as healthcare professionals, who exactly gets to make the decision on when capacity is absent? Well, in simple terms, capacity is your right to make decisions about your own life, okay? And we know, everybody in this room in particular knows that the intellectual disability population is routinely and consistently denied this right. The fact is that capacity must always be presumed. So, absolutely every person who we come into contact with, we presume their capacity in terms of them making decisions. And the burden of proof is on us to prove, to come up with the evidence that contrary to that. And our own legislation, as well as the European Convention of Human Rights, sets down that this is irrespective of any diagnosis, any disability, any disease, or any age. Okay, capacity is always presumed. Equally, it's on us as healthcare professionals and nurses to support everybody's capacity. So time was we had a measure of blanket capacity in this country. So everybody had a score, and that score might be your IQ, or it might be your cognition score, or your memory score, and based on that, that score dictated whether capacity was present or absent. But now the new legislation has moved us into a measure of functional capacity, where we now support all persons to understand information around a decision, to retain it, to weigh it up, and to communicate their decision back to us, maybe through speech, maybe through technology, hand gestures, eye movement, whatever it happens to be. So back to the beginning, when do we start? What's the optimal timing for these really tricky decisions? Well, I came back from a conference some months back, right, with an armful of these fellas, thinking this is great now. I'm going to nail down the elderly parents, the bachelor uncles, hubby. Does anybody want to have a guess about my success rate? Well, it wasn't quite 0, but it was pretty close, okay? Does anybody want to hazard a guess about why my success rate was so poor? Bingo, exactly that. Nobody wants to talk about, much less think about, their own death, or even worse, the death of a vulnerable loved one. And this is not peculiar to Irish society. International legislation across the board, and I'm sure our American colleagues will agree with us here, that people in general don't like to confront this, okay? It's not a pleasant discussion, and it's one that people really, really avoid. But here's what we do know. Early on is best, okay? We broker the best outcomes by early on discussions, around the time of diagnosis. Ideally in the patient's own home, or wherever they're resident, at a non-crisis time. So we know that in the back of an ambulance, when there's been a terrible event and emotions are high, that's the worst possible time to be making these decisions, okay? All the research is also in agreement that the nurse is the best placed, with the best opportunity and the best skill set to engage in these discussions. So people wear it, and it's up to us to sort of step up here. The research does acknowledge, however, that key moments can be very difficult to identify, and I mean that's easy to understand. So back to the idea of paternalism and the doctor knows best. Well, we're moving now towards an area where we want to consider the patient's own will and preferences, okay? And we're trying to move away from that best interest scenario. And the mantra here from all the lobby groups is nothing about me without me. And that's well and good, except that when it comes down to it, the doctors are struggling to adhere to our decisions, okay? When the doctor is faced with a decision that they personally don't agree with, or where they differ from, they don't think it's in the patient's best interest, or where there's any suspicion of validity over the actual document, the doctors really struggle here. And when there's a conflict, we go into our default position, and we know from being out there the default position is to do nothing and to continue treatments that are often really futile. So you're prolonging patient suffering, you're increasing the stress of the family. There's a lot of moral distress reported from the nurses, so no winners here, okay? This is an interesting little vignette that actually happened to me in clinical practice a couple of weeks back. An elderly gentleman came in to me. I do moonlight in the local emergency department, so an elderly man comes in. He had mild intellectual disability, entering a sort of a moderate phase of dementia, nursing home resident. He fell in the nursing home and he broke his hip. Okay, so in he comes to us. His niece was with him, and she signed, orthopedic surgeon comes down to meet the patient. The niece signed the consent form for the surgery. So for anybody who doesn't know, the only way to take away pain of a broken hip is to have surgery to repair it. So this was all fine and nothing too unusual here, until I discovered an advanced healthcare directive in his notes, and it stipulated no surgery. So now we have to have a rethink here, okay? So I went into Des and I talked to him, go back to the idea of supported capacity. And I said, Des, have you got pain? And he said, oh, it's up here, terrible, pointed to his hip. And I said, you know, they say you need to have surgery to fix the hip. And he said, so they tell me. And I said, what do you think of that, Des, that you'll have to have surgery? And he said, I still remember what he said to me. He said, oh, sure, I'll have to do something about this. I couldn't stick this. Now, there's your supported capacity. There's your consent. Now, several healthcare professionals went back to him repeatedly over the course of the next few hours, had the same conversation, had the same answer from Des. So he's fully consenting. He signed his own consent form and was in theatre by morning. So there's a win-win situation. We just have to rethink this, okay? So back to the barriers that we're facing with these. They're the usual suspects. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we're too busy, the institution's not behind us, they're not educating us, there's not enough awareness, and so forth. Okay. and other big considerations. And the part of me sort of thinks that these are even more important. There's a prevailing view here that the next of kin have decision-making rights, particularly with our intellectual disability population, okay? And that's not the case. And it's really challenging for us as nurses to address this. And equally, it is extremely understandable, but challenging for next of kin to, to understand this and to come to terms with this, particularly where there's a vulnerable person who's becoming an adult, but somebody for whom they've made decisions the whole time up to this, okay? So back to the legislation. There's one outstanding piece missing from the current legislation, and it's a guidance document for us as healthcare professionals and social care workers on how to proceed with this, on how to break it down and what exactly to do going forward. It's due possibly towards the end of this year, more likely to be the start of 2021. So until then, there's a whole heap of professional uncertainty out there and a little bit of role confusion on whose job it is, okay? But we'll get there. In the meantime, we have to uphold the spirit of this new legislation, okay? We have to direct our intellectual disability population towards expressing their wills and preferences around what they would like to happen to them, okay? We have to initiate these tricky discussions, and we have to support their capacity to express their preferences here, okay? And we have to advocate to have the advanced healthcare directives supported and acknowledged out there, okay? Thank you for listening to me. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes?
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. This is fantastic. And I'm so glad to hear that you're working on this as your dissertation.
Yes.
Yes, and hopefully a long body of work on this, and so I want to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
I noticed a couple of areas that I would just love to hear your opinion on since you're steeped in this. One of them is that from your example, there was an advanced directive,
yes,
and yet you continued to have that discussion, which was in direct contrast to the advanced directive.
Yes.
And the literature, at least in the U.S., the Irish literature, shows that over time, over a 5-year span, more or less, at least the one that I can remember, the study that I can remember, 40 to 60% of elderly people change their minds.
Yes.
Dependent on which particular part of the advanced directive you're talking about.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering how you recommend addressing that, and I think you did on an individual basis, but kind of on a larger policy basis or thinking it out going forward. And so and especially in the face of our poor abilities with prognosis. And I think overall everybody in healthcare recognizes that prognostication is nowhere near the science that it should be.
Absolutely. Our colleague here has identified exactly why our consultation document, the missing piece of the legislation, why it's still missing. There are so many questions that are still unanswered, and they've been put into consultation with all the various lobby groups for exactly that, for the ethical areas that surround change of mind, around, when capacity comes into question, and all the things that you've outlined, really. So we're waiting currently for those for advice to be taken on that, and there's the research around this is emerging the whole time. For instance, lobby group put out a statistic the other day that 80% of our elderly population don't have any decision made, never mind changing their minds. And I think we're at about 3% in this country for advanced healthcare directives being made. So it's so new. It's very teeny. And as I understand it, it's about 35%-ish in the States now. Yeah. So this is new. Okay.
Is there anything in particular on intellectual disabilities? I would assume not, because it's only 3%
I think
of
the
the
challenge
population.
for intellectual disabilities in particular is around informed decision making. And if somebody had an advanced healthcare directive and had an intellectual disability, I'd be interested to see the background information that was shared with him in order to enable him to understand the consequences of making a decision that I'll never have surgery, irrespective.
I think that particular Yeah, and I think that particular example, where he had refused surgery, it was they were thinking down the road and maybe if there was a cancer picture, etc. I don't think anybody had foreseen the hip scenario, so I think it was just it was one of those things. But yeah, yes.
I suppose in relation to our experience so far in applying for wardship cases, because that's really the legislation that we have at the moment.
Yeah.
The President of the High Court has actually taken a very, very clear view of adapting the assisted capacity decision making in all the cases, and he's very, very clear in looking for the will and preference of the actual individual and also of the family. And in every update, and they're mostly now in a 3-monthly, a 6-monthly review cases, he's looking for the will preferences and any of those advanced care directives that have been put in place, and actually monitoring them as closely.
Absolutely, and an office has been set up as well to with a registrar to create a list of the advanced healthcare directives. Yeah.
The people that have been put into wardship years and years ago, they're actually out now, and they're requesting us in services to actually identify those people that were, so they're actually reviewing them, which is
on a case by case basis. Exactly. Yeah.
It's good to hear that your experience is very positive in terms of how this has been rolled out in the ID community.
Well, definitely, from the President's point of view, it's very much like the will and preference that has to be, he's taking people into wardship, he's equally quickly removing people from wardship as quick as he's putting them in, and it's that ongoing sort of review and the reports that are submitted on a 3-monthly, 6-monthly basis. Extreme amount of work, but it's
huge. It's huge. It's very broad. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
So, in addition for the questions for Teresa, and advanced health directives is a controversial area as well, isn't it? It's going to play out in many, many different scenarios. Does anyone have any questions for any of our other speakers? That they would like to pose? Judy.
I was very interested in your company around your motivational speaking, and how would we find out more about that?
I have card with me. I want the contact.
Brilliant.
I'm going to interject there because I'm going to promote.
Yes, good.
She does put herself out there to go to schools, so she has spoken in some of the schools in the Ross, that they brought her in, so it is something that she is putting herself out. I'm a very proud mother.
Good for you.
She also CSA, as part of it was the work experience, so she now works in the Apex in the Ross 1 day a week, and they're fantastic in there with her. It is absolutely amazing what they do with her. So from the point of view of the course, it got her where she got to go to college. She used public transport for the first time by herself, which was very difficult for me. Yeah. So it was like that. I heard, as you say, we tend to make decisions and we feel we should always be able to make those decisions. But I have to say, it gave her a huge amount of confidence. It helped me to untie the strings and make her go a little bit. So it was an amazing course for both of us. Yeah. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody for her getting the opportunity to do it.
And I think that's a really important point that you've made there. In many ways, this is about freeing you up as well as your daughter, isn't it? It's exactly that. And going to a maturing stage of a relationship. It's really important, yeah. And I have to say I was extremely inspired by your story, I have to say, and immensely proud that we were able to be part of that journey you've taken. Really proud. Diane.
I have a question to Special Olympics International and the healthy communities, healthy living. Are advanced directives part of the conversation that you have with athletes and are in the healthy communities?
That's an excellent question.
we have a global aging task force around the aging athlete, and so there are especially working with the National Task Group on Dementia in the U.S. There is a proposal for developing this in certain of our programs. I think it's Arkansas, but there are certain states in which there have been pilots of discussions of end-of-life issues. And there's promotion of the 5 wishes in particular around that, which is at the appropriate, a more appropriate developmental level than some of the other advanced directive material. So we do talk about it, but we don't have a formalized program, and we certainly don't have an international program. But I would absolutely be thrilled if anyone was interested in working on our aging task force, and to be able to put that as much more a part of what we're doing.
I think her name is Teresa Down.
She's not busy. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anne.
The college-based program that is that a national program?
Yeah, so I'll guess Lorraine, come up. We'll talk about you mean the CIL?
Yes,
Yeah, Lorraine.
because we have state college in the U.S., and I'm just wondering what that system
So my
is.
colleague Sinead Foran would probably be better able to answer that, purely because she brought it to WIT. I started in WIT in 2015, so I was really lucky that when I came here all of the hard graft had been done per se, but we would have brought it to WIT in collaboration with Dundalk, but it started in Trinity, am I right? Yeah. Do you want to come up here as well?
So the programme began originally in Trinity as a standalone module, and then it developed into a 2-year programme. We took the model, they wanted to extend that nationally. We took the model, their programme wasn't nationally accredited. So
Wasn't?
No. So it was accredited within the systems and processes and structures of Trinity. We accredited it nationally with DKIT. So it was set on our quality framework. So our students get a national qualification. That was very important to us. So currently what we're doing is, I suppose, trying to extend that and extend that accreditation process to a higher level. The needs of the students are so diverse, and we have students that want more, and somebody like Shannon who could go much further.
Because currently it's at level 3,
Yeah.
PTAC level 3.
Yeah.
But we would like to expand that further.
That has to get American.
Yeah.
defined.
I don't know what
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent in America
from the
is.
USA perspective, but it is equivalent in terms of Irish perspective of first year, second year in secondary school. That's the level 3, to meet the very diverse needs and abilities of the students, and it has to be inclusive. So we wanted to be inclusive rather than exclusive, and that was the reason, that we set it at that level.
There's so many questions. How many credit are they matriculated, or it's a?
So the students come in. So it's a 60 credit program.
60.
Which is a European on the European framework.
ECTs,
yeah.
Over 2 years,
Yeah.
and it's
2 years,
part-time,
yeah.
2 days a week.
Yeah.
10 hours per week.
Yeah.
10 hours per week, 2 days. So
Yeah.
4 semesters.
Well,
Yeah.
I can get more into this.
Yeah,
later.
absolutely.
Yeah, and we have
Yeah.
we have an inclusive national education forum now where we're trying to drive the inclusive education at 3rd level, at a policy level, because resources and funding are very limited for inclusive education in 3rd level. It doesn't exist really.
Yeah.
And just one follow-up. Is it widely practiced, or many colleges and universities have programs, or it's just beginning to roll out?
It varies. It's very variable around the country. There are different models, different frameworks, and that's the issue. There's no standard. Yeah, there's no standard, and that's the issue around accreditation as well. So the INHEF forum is really going to work on that now going forward, but it's very slow. It's very, very slow
And the hope
work.
would be that once it goes to national level, more supports are put in place, because as I said, I was part of it between 2016 and 18. We haven't done it yet for the past 2 years because there are challenges to it. You know, we are third level educators, so I lecture on the intellectual disability nursing programme and the applied healthcare nursing programme. And then when you have the CSIL, it's very, very difficult when you don't get that proper support from service providers within the Southeast. So that's why I had put that up there. Those links are really, really pivotal to the success of the programme. So hopefully when it does go to a more national level, more supports and resources will be put in place to make sure that it is a programme that suits the need of everybody, and like Shannon, that it's a success, not just a tick the box exercise, if you know what I mean.
And one of the things, just from the Irish, sorry Sarah, just to clarify, like from the Irish perspective, disability supports don't apply to people with intellectual disability. They apply to people with physical disabilities, and only if they're on full-time programmes. So a programme like ours is a part-time programme, and thereby students are not entitled to any resources or supports from the disability services, which are really good in our third level institutions and universities, but our programmes like ours don't get supported in that way, and that's the big challenge, and that's what we're trying to target. So.
Okay.
No problem.
And just to follow, I'd like to, sorry, Jerry.
Is there an age parameter on
Age?
Over 18 years.
Up to
Any age.
No, whenever.
Yeah.
So in the States and in New York State, that type of education would cap out with state funding at 21.
Oh, wow.
But
So
there are adult
there are different,
models.
depending on the level of education.
Right. I just want to say a few things in relation to Sinead and when she came to me with the idea of the programme. So I think you didn't really need to convince me too much, but it's one of the things in relation, apart from anything else, I daren't argue with her. So, but one of the things in relation to that programme was overcoming the innate conservative mindset of the educational establishment. You know, at both a conscious and unconscious level, we tend to pigeonhole people, and that was a huge battle. First, Sinead coming to me and convincing me of the value of the programme, and then Sinead and I battling with the registrar's office, if you remember, around the programme. And some very fundamental things that I think were really important about that programme in terms of that barrier fight. So the first one was the idea that people with intellectual disabilities are part of our society. They're not to be segregated, and that includes in terms of mainstream education, and that was a real battle. And very symbolic of that battle was the notion of graduates from the programme graduating with the rest of our students, not being separated out. Graduates on that CIL programme put as much effort into getting their award as all other students do in getting theirs, and that importance of being recognised, I think, was a very fundamental barrier that programme broke. And I think the other thing that it did was enhance the life, certainly of the School of Health Science, in terms of both lecturing staff and, more importantly, the student body, particularly in the context of nursing, because by and large, our nursing students only saw people with intellectual disabilities in what you might call social or clinical care settings. It was rare to see them in normal everyday life, and it's a real reminder to our students that actually there is a life outside of the exactly, yeah. It's about being members of society and engaging with people, and it's about engaging with people on a level playing field, mutual respect, all of the things that we take for granted, and it really enhances the life of the school and indeed WIT, you know, in terms of students who wouldn't come across normally people with intellectual disabilities because of other career paths they've chosen in life. So it was hugely important bringing that programme into WIT, and I'd like to pay my respect and regard to Sinead for pioneering that, and indeed for getting it nationally recognised in terms of accreditation where nobody else had gone down that route, and that was a real achievement too. So I just want to say that. And one other thing I'd like to say, so Teresa is on the master's programme. It's called the Care Collaboration, and that was a very pioneering initiative, pioneered by the Nursing Midwifery Practice Development Unit in the South East. It's the first initiative of its kind. Others have tried to copy it, but it was a pioneering initiative and involves the NMPDU, led by Judy Ryan, investing in 2 full-time research stipends, but not research that's esoteric and not to do with practice. It's focused on practice problems that our services meet and how we solve them. So the Advanced Care Directive is in effect a major practice problem because people have got to understand it, interpret it and implement it. It goes back to our conversations around implementation science and ensuring that that's done in a consistent and fair way and a considerate way. And it's a very significant piece of research, I think, for the services. But that wouldn't be possible without the support of the NMPDU and Judy in all that she does in relation to supporting that initiative. So again, I'd just like to pay tribute to the NMPDU in terms of its far-sightedness in supporting work like Teresa is doing.
So welcome back to session 2. I'm chairing the next session. Sara Kennedy is my name, and I'm the head of the Department of Nursing and Healthcare. And I'm extremely proud to chair the next session because it showcases our staff in WIT that I couldn't be more proud of, and that I can stand here very, very confident and proud of each of them. So we have Dr. Sinead Foran, who is the programme lead of the Intellectual Disability BSc programme. And Sinead is going to deliver her speech on future-proofing the curriculum. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Sinead, and I hope you'll enjoy her session.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Thank you. And welcome back, everyone. So, future-proofing a curriculum in intellectual disability nursing. Currently in Ireland we are in a very unique position along with the UK in that we are the only 2 countries internationally to deliver a healthcare professional whose entire education is focused on meeting the needs of people with intellectual disabilities. So I just want that to sit with you for a second because that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So we're very unique, and that presents an amazing opportunity for us, and certainly some challenges as well. So it gives us an opportunity as educators to ensure that people with intellectual disabilities can articulate their needs, and we can meet their needs through our education of our nursing students and through our curriculum development work. We have this amazing opportunity now with the Golisano Foundation and St. John Fisher to develop a curriculum in the USA that doesn't exist currently. So I've started some work already with Dr. Holly Brown and Beth Kiss from St. John Fisher. We're making some good progress in that regard. It's amazing what you can do, as Diane said, with modern technology. And so we're really excited about what this is going to bring to us, because we are also going to learn from the USA experience. So it's going to be very, very collaborative. So, questions that curriculum developers ask themselves all the time. Does our curriculum meet current needs? So we need to think about, are we meeting the current need of the service users that we want to support and our students that are sitting in front of us? And the next question we need to ask ourselves is, will our curriculum meet future needs? And the future needs refer to the emerging trends in the field of intellectual disability, and we have had significant change in the field of intellectual disability in Ireland and internationally. We know now that, for example, preterm infants are surviving longer and living with multiple and complex healthcare needs. We know that people with intellectual disabilities generally are enjoying increased longevity and successful ageing. We have huge change in terms of assisted technology, a movement of advocacy, self-determination, autonomy, that is actually probably one of the most challenging things for service providers in intellectual disabilities. Like Teresa mentioned earlier, what do we do when somebody makes a decision or takes a decision that we don't agree with? And how do we support them? You know, and how do we react to that situation? So there are lots of complexities that we need to deal with in terms of future-proofing our curriculum. And so the work that we're going to do with Golisano and with St. John Fisher is going to enhance our own curriculum, that's our hope, but also to improve things from the USA perspective as well. So, important key developments that underpin our curriculum in Ireland. We're very lucky in that we have some very contemporary documents, policy, legislative changes that have emerged over the last number of years, as well as the normal ethical, political and legal frameworks that we underpin nursing with. We have our Nursing and Midwifery Board of Ireland standards and requirements for intellectual disability nursing. We have the very recently published quality care metrics for intellectual disability services, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. And then, of course, in terms of the future, and I think you all got a copy of our Shaping the Future of Intellectual Disability Nursing in Ireland, and that is going to provide the roadmap for the development of ID nursing in Ireland and the improved quality of life for people with intellectual disabilities. So in terms of our nurse registration standards and requirements, this is governed within a legal framework. So we're very tightly regulated. We have key standards and requirements that must be met within the ID nursing programme. And these include professional core competencies that students must achieve. It includes indicative content broadly that we as the educators need to include in our curriculum. And it also then gives us guidance in terms of the clinical placements that our students undertake. So our students undertake placements in terms of children's services, older adult services and specialist ID nursing placements. So their entire clinical placement experience is around working with people with intellectual disabilities across the lifespan. And our curriculum very much takes a lifespan approach from birth to death. And I know we have a number of graduates sitting in the audience, so I hope that I'm accurate in what I'm saying and you will say, yeah, she's right, she's not telling any lies. So in terms of the American experience then, there is no guidance, my understanding, in terms of intellectual disability nursing. And from speaking with Holly and Beth, they talk about the Canadian guidelines, and that's what they're using to underpin their practice. So I think long term we're hoping that this might change with the work that we're doing, and I know Diane, you have that goal as well. Our challenge then within our curriculum is that we have nursing content that we need to deliver on and our students need to be competent with, but we also have intellectual disability content that needs to be very specific, and bringing the two together, you know, so that we have an intellectual disability nurse practitioner. And we have done that through the development of a suite of core nursing modules that our students undertake with our general nursing students and our mental health nursing students, skills modules, etc. And then we have a suite of specific intellectual disability modules that may not necessarily be nursing focused, but they give our students the foundation for understanding all of the concepts related to the life of the person with intellectual disabilities. Our curriculum in WIT, and I just want to pay tribute to our dear friend, our late friend, Dr. Sue Fensom, who developed this framework for us a number of years ago. It's underpinned with nursing knowledge, nursing science, nursing values and attitudes, and nursing skills and experience. And these are critical to nursing practice. And what we try to do is to embed our ID-specific content within this framework. And I think we do achieve that, and certainly there's always things that we need to develop and change and amend as we go along, and that's the thing about future-proofing a curriculum. Can you really do it? I don't know, we can have that discussion. In terms of then the nursing and midwifery quality care metrics, this is a really important document for service providers. It provides a framework for how the fundamentals of nursing care can be measured using care process quality indicators. And with it, this is specifically to intellectual disability services. There are a number of other domains that they're developed for, midwifery, general nursing practice, etc. It's a continuous quality improvement journey, and what I want to show you is this slide, which are the key domains within the quality indicators that have been demonstrated as critical for quality service provision to people with intellectual disabilities. And what I really like about this, because it brings it home to me, every single one of these indicators are met in our curriculum at the moment. Our students are educated in every single one of those areas by the time they get to graduation. There isn't anything there that we are not meeting in our curriculum currently, which is fantastic, because this is as contemporary as it gets, and we are already there. So I think that's very relieving for us. Some of these things are mandatory training, some of the domains are threaded throughout the 4 years, over the 4-year journey. So we're very pleased about that, and we want to build on that as time goes on. The document then that you have there on your seats today, the Shaping the Future of Intellectual Disability Nursing in Ireland, has been a really important document for us as ID nurses. Just to say to our visitors, it began as a comprehensive examination of the role of the RNID through focus groups that were undertaken nationally. So ID nurses contributed to all of the recommendations within this. There are 31 in total across 4 key themes. At the moment, we're currently at the implementation stage of the report. I am the chair of the subcommittee on education. So we are looking at how we can future-proof curriculum, future-proof the educational pathway, so that you, the practitioners here, nurses, can meet the needs of people with ID and their future needs. So it's a big piece of work, and we're making our way through it, and Judy and I are working very closely on it, and we are making progress, I think, Judy, aren't we?
Sorry, Sinead, to say that Sinead is the chair of that group, which is really important from a Southeast perspective and from Waterford, but it's all educators represented on that, the universities, the colleges, the Centres for Nurse Education and CPCs. So it's a national group with all educators coming with one purpose in mind, to improve education for people with, so we can support people with an intellectual disability better. So it's the first time they've come together.
We've never had that opportunity for all of the intellectual disability education providers to come together as a group. And very often what you find in those settings is that people are a little bit protective about what they're doing. They don't want to share the information in case we steal their postgraduate programme and deliver it down here. The competition that goes on. But it's not like that at all. People are so open to sharing. Sharing information, because ultimately we all have the one goal, to improve the lives of people with ID, and that's it in a nutshell, really. So the themes, I just want to run through the themes from the report so you're clear about, particularly practitioners on the ground, about where it's kind of going to go and what it's going to look like. The 4 key themes, the central one there being person-centredness and person-centred planning. Again, going back to linking to Teresa's presentation around assisted decision making, the whole movement of advocacy, how people choose the way they want to live their lives. The RNID has to be central to that, to facilitate choice and to facilitate those complex decisions that people make about their lives, because we are the ones on the ground working in those areas, and we are the ones listening and communicating to the service user about their hopes, their dreams, their wishes. We need to respect when people want to choose support, when they want to say no to support, what kind of support they want, the level of support that they want, and that's a real challenge for us, because as nurses, very often we just want to get in and do, and we find it hard to step back and say, this is the decision, So that's going to be a challenge for us as practitioners. The next theme there, supporting individuals with intellectual disabilities with their health, social care and well-being. We know that there are significant health disparities for people with intellectual disabilities. We know, in comparison to the general population, we know that they have barriers in terms of accessing healthcare, screening, diagnostics, etc. Mary Reid is going to talk to you a little bit about that in a while. We know all those health disparities exist. The RNID must be central to opening those doorways for people with ID and removing those barriers. It's critically important, and that is one of the most important roles for us, I see, is breaking down those barriers and allowing people with ID to enjoy the healthcare that they deserve, and the healthcare utilisation. It's not just about provision of healthcare, but it's utilising healthcare, utilising it in the same way that everybody else in the general population gets to do that. That is so important. The next theme there to, I don't know if you can see it anyway, supporting individuals, no, not that one, developing nursing capacity, capability and professional leadership. This is really important because in this region it's something that we haven't been very good at, developing specialist roles, advanced practice. There are so many areas that nurses can be developing their specialist roles. You know, anything that you're passionate about that is going to improve the life of the people that you're working with, look at developing that into a specialist role for yourself. That requires advanced decision making from your perspective, advanced problem solving and advanced levels of education. And I can see numbers of you there who've done your master's programs already, and you know, why are you doing those programs and where are you going to go with them? So have a plan for your practice, for your specialist practice. And again, this is something that I will be working with John Fisher around, you know, potential for specialist practitioners in the USA as well. And the fourth theme there, improving the experience and outcomes for individuals with an intellectual disability. Again, something that is a challenge for us in intellectual disabilities at times is measuring what we do. Evaluating our care, measuring it and looking at auditing it. Are we achieving what we set out to achieve? Do we need to change how we do things as a result of that? And that's something with the quality care metrics will give you a platform to do that. So again, these are things that I think as the ID practitioners are here who are in the front line, you need to think about going forward in terms of your practice. As regards future-proofing the ID curriculum then, we need to have a very strong undergraduate programme, and I believe that we do have that. We have a very strong undergraduate programme in WIT, but nationally it's very, very strong, it's thorough. You know, we have a fantastic blend of clinical placements with theoretical components. We need now to provide very good postgraduate pathways for students, and there are some there, and Judy and I are working together on collating all of that information, but we need to create more opportunities. Things that we are doing in WIT ourselves, standalone modules. Sometimes people don't have time to undertake a master's, but they might like to do a standalone module that's specific to practice. So we're going to look at that, and targeting again the emerging trends. That will allow people to develop specialist and advanced nursing practice. And if you take nothing away from today, please go away and think about how you can develop specialist roles within your services, because that's the future for RNIDs. It really is. And the other thing that's important in terms of future-proofing ID curriculum is developing a research culture within the region. Judy will talk to you about her research later on, but the NMPDU does have a research funding for projects within services, and all you need to do is to get in touch and start the ball rolling. And you will get good support then, academic support from WIT, you know, if you're successful. But that is really important, that we have those 4 pillars in terms of future-proofing our programme. So translating the experience then to the USA. So the work that has started already, and what we're trying to do, Diane we thought, oh yeah, we can develop a curriculum, no problem. And then she said, oh no, but we don't want any new modules, we don't want any new programmes. You have to thread it in what we already have, because there's no space for anything extra. Like, right, okay. So we are doing it. We're making it happen at the moment. So there needs to be a lifespan approach to the work that you're doing. It has to be, you know, across the continuum of the lifespan, and the transitions that people go through across the lifespan, and their families, of course, really important. We need to look at getting some sort of national guidance and national guidelines for people with ID in the USA down the road, as well as your general nursing, ethical, legal frameworks that we work within. You need to look at things politically, environmentally, technologically, economically. You know, there's so many aspects that we need to look at, because people with ID, they're not in hospital. They can be, but they're out there living, working, playing, and they are engaging in all of these aspects of life, and they interact with all of these aspects of life. So our curriculum development needs to take all of that into account. And I have to say, from a personal perspective, I think the ID curriculum, it's probably the toughest programme in WIT, because it's so broad. Our students have so much content to cover. And the placements then, you know, they're very broad, they're challenging. They're spread geographically. It's a tough programme. But I have complete confidence in the graduates that we produce at the end of it, because we take all of these things into account. And down the road, long time down the road, we may look at developing an international curriculum that will cross the water, if you like, from Ireland to America in terms of an ID healthcare professional in nursing. And that is it. Thank you very much. Anybody has any questions? Have we time for questions?
We'll wait to the questions at the end.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Somebody has something burning. Yeah. Thanks very much. So that's our curriculum, and next up is Dr. Mary Reedy. Mary is a lecturer again in our department. And Mary's primary research area has been in health literacy, in the area of health promotion, in the area of breast cancer, and many other areas. And she's here to tell you all about them. So a warm welcome for Dr. Mary Reedy.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So my name is Mary, and I'm just going to talk to you about some key areas about research in the Department of Nursing this morning. So when we were getting this ready, we were having a little look. I'm very proud to be a graduate of the WIT RNID programme. I returned to college as a very mature student in 2008 to undertake my BSc in intellectual disability nursing. Now, a little bit later on, I'll discuss the care collaboration, as John discussed it. There's some girls from my class here. We graduated together. So as you can see, I came up to the end of 2012, and we had a very broad kind of a sociological impact on our nursing curriculum, as Sinead has mentioned. And I became really interested in the area of health inequalities and intellectual disability. And when I came in 2008, I'd just come off the back of losing both my parents to cancers that were diagnosed too late for any sort of treatment. So towards the end of 2012, thanks to the care collaboration, funding became available for me to undertake my PhD, which I did from 2012 to 2016. As you can see, I got some family members along the way, a daughter-in-law, an adoptive son, and my granddaughter, Caitlin. So yeah, you see, I had a very squiggly line from me to Dr. Me, but... So along my way then as an undergraduate, and Olivia spoke about it earlier on, in 2011 I was awarded a HRB undergraduate student summership scholarship. And what that was is in third year you did a research project over the summer in an area of interest to you, supported by staff at the Department of Nursing in WIT. And at the time, Dr. Suzanne Denif was my academic supervisor. So breast cancer was one of the areas that we were interested in. So we looked at breast cancer in younger women from diverse cultural backgrounds. Now, when I wrote the first draft of this paper, I got John's "so what" question on the front of it, and I never ever forgot that feeling. But eventually we did manage to get the paper published, and it was
Sorry.
It's okay. It made me who I am today. It taken my neck a little bit, John. So yeah, so we found some nice, interesting, things from that. Issues that women had around their fertility, issues about, how could they lie to their children that they weren't going to, make it. So it was a very interesting paper. So it kind of, broadened my interest in breast cancer. So as I said then, thanks to the CARE collaboration, I got some funding for my PhD over the 4 years to undertake a study. So we designed and tested a cancer awareness program for women with intellectual disabilities. We knew from the research that was out there, Daniel Satte's research in France, he was an epidemiologist that was bringing forward figures for the first time to show that breast lumps were being diagnosed at stage 4, there was lymph node involvement, women were dying younger. It was just really interesting to me. So we wanted to raise awareness for cancer warning signs, the risk cancer for breast and cervical cancer, and screening programs. But as ever, based on our ID provision in WIT, we wanted to make women more active participants in their own healthcare. So we wanted to encourage early medical help seeking for symptoms that the women may have. So we developed this program called Embraces ID, and we tested it with the women. So we had 25 women with intellectual disabilities who designed the program with me and came along over the 2 years that we ran out the program and developed it. So the program did become available in the central repository for all HSE services in the southeast. But incidentally then, along the way, Professor Craig Melville in the University of Glasgow picked up my thesis on the internet. He was looking into some work about in the Greater Glasgow and Clyde area in Glasgow. It's an area of really high social deprivation, and they knew that women and men with intellectual disability were not accessing cancer screening services. They had their figures. So they knew that sociologically, the socio-economic factors meant that incidence rates were typically 50% higher than in the general population in this area, the most deprived areas. So we went off to Scotland, and we've worked with them for nearly 2 years now. And what the issue was, did the program work? Because we knew it had worked because we had tested it. Did it work just because I was delivering it and I was the nurse? So what they did is they ripped the program apart, and they peer designed it with women with intellectual disabilities, so that women with intellectual disabilities became peer educators in their own communities, so that they would deliver the program to women with intellectual disabilities. So it's been fraught. There's been many a tear shed along the way by me when they rip your work apart, but they had some key issues around, some things that, because I'm a very privileged advantage of being a non-disabled person working in the area of disabilities. So we had to stand back and take all the women's ideas on board. So it's currently going to pilot in Scotland. So it's called Adults with Learning Disabilities, AWLD. So it's been really supported by the NHS in Scotland. Then along the way then, we met our great friends from Golisano Institute, and again we followed on our cancer theme, and I'm currently working with these great guys from 2nd Avenue in Rochester, and we're developing an avatar for a simulation for students in the lab to promote early detection, but sensitive and meaningful care for the students who are undertaking their intellectual disability components of their nursing at St. John Fisher to become more sensitive to the needs of women with intellectual disabilities, because you know, so we, in my PhD, we've had, I know I'm putting that around there, but I spent so much time of my life talking about people's breasts. We've actually had women who've pulled their breasts out when the clamp has come down because nobody had told them it was going to hurt. So that's what we're developing with the guys. So we've been working on that for the past number of months, and we continue to work on it with them. So it should really, you know, help the students to get that sensitivity around meaningful care. And the next thing then is John's seedling idea was for the Cupid Cost Action Funding proposal. And the thing about this is we put in our first application, so we have colleagues from Slovenia and colleagues again from Golisano involved in this with us, as well as numerous other countries around Europe. We have Martin Kuipers from Nijmegen, and we have other colleagues from, they're called inclusive target countries, so countries that are not predominantly research focused will come on board with us. So the European Union came back and the cut-off score to get funding was 34. We achieved 34, but we still didn't get funded. So they gave us a number of recommendations, so we're waiting for April. The next round of funding will be released in April. So hopefully we might be luckier this time, might get it to 35. I see Evan looking at me. Yeah, we'll get it to 35. So our another thing that we are involved in is, and again we have colleagues from Slovenia here with us today, and Maida is here with us today, is to work on the Student Stress Training Mobile Management project. It's called STEM. So again, under the directorship of John, we're leading this European project to tackle student stress. Okay, because our students need to know that they're supported when they're out in clinical placement, because nursing students in particular, they have their academics, they're running their own lives, most of them are working at the weekends, but they also have over their 4-year programme in Ireland 81 weeks of clinical placement. So it's a very tough programme, as Sinead said. So we were awarded almost €300,000 to do this piece of research. So hopefully it'll be up and running by the 1st of March. We recently recruited our research assistant. So you see, it's funded by the European Union under the Erasmus programme. So our colleagues are in Barcelona, they're in Maribor, we have TSSG here, our mobile technologies, we have IBK in Germany, and we have UPMC Whitfield, who are clinical partners. So yeah, that should be very helpful for our students and helping them go forward. And then the last one, again, John and I, see, we work very closely together, and Dr. Michelle Foley.
She forgave me for the comment.
Yeah. So Dr. Michelle Foley was the PI on this piece of research. She's our Marie Curie Research Fellow in the Department of Nursing. We undertook a Southeast Regional Drugs and Alcohol Task Force strategy. So we looked at a situational analysis of substance misuse in the southeast of Ireland. We had a series of focus groups, network cafes, so we spoke to everybody. See, part of our inclusivity comes into our research. We just don't speak to one group, we speak to all groups. So we had parents, addicts in recovery, family groups, family support networks, and service providers, so we all came together in one room. So we trashed it out over a couple of months. So this is being launched tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock in WIT. There's the link if anybody is interested in attending the event, but it was really hard to listen to the stories. It was very, very harrowing, because it really is a difficult problem. And as you can see, inequalities, marginalised groups, vulnerable groups, that's really the area that I'm interested in. And I see some Claire in the audience there. We also have another project waiting to go to funding stages, and Judy, where we're going to follow the journey of a person with an intellectual disability through the acute hospital setting. But again, we're waiting on the funding call to reopen for that. Because the thing about research is you can have all the ideas, but it's hard to get the funding. Everybody's in at the same pot of money. So that's basically just a snapshot of some of the research I've done. And as Sarah mentioned, I have also done some research in the area of health literacy, which is very important, and all my students will know I always keep talking about health literacy because it's really important to get things out in a way that people understand. So, yep, that is me. So, if anybody any questions?
Thank you very much, Mary. Mary doesn't rest, as you can see. So that's brilliant. So we're going to keep going because we're under time constraints, and we'll take some questions at the end or whatever way through. But thank you very much, Mary. It gives me great pleasure now to welcome Mary Moylan. Mary is lecturing with us in WIT. A very short time. I think we could count it in weeks, but we'll say months. But it's a very short time. But we're particularly proud of Mary because Mary has done phenomenal work in the area of dementia with ID, and she has spearheaded and started one of the first clinics in Ireland in this area, and she's here to tell you all about it. Thank you very much, Mary.
Hi. Good, it's scanned, yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
There. Oh, yeah, correct.
I didn't start the clock, Mary.
No, thank God for that. Oh, okay. Hi, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to talk to you about my journey from student to lecturer here at WIT. I see a number of people who I trained with and also preceptors that I had, so absolutely delighted to be here. I started my professional journey in sorry. See, I told you I was new to this.
No, it's just that one.
Yeah, I have it.
It's a bit of a funny.
Yeah, no, that's going to have. Yep. I started my professional journey here in 2007 in the undergrad programme for intellectual disability learning through the HSE sponsorship scheme open to public sector workers to train as a nurse. I was successful with my application, and I was absolutely delighted to be offered a place in WIT. I applied for the programme because I could see how the difference that an RNID can make when they're working and supporting people with ID, and I could also see the impact and the reassurance that family got from when people were when their person was being supported in a positive manner. I graduated, yep, sorry, I'm a bit behind my slides. Yeah, there are predominantly the reasons why I wanted to be an RNID, and I really love the whole ethos and the belief of what it is to impart your knowledge and impact positively on somebody's life. I graduated in 2011, and it was a very, very proud moment for me, my son, to reach my goal, and was ready to start my career as an RNID. On returning to the ID service where I had been sponsored from, I worked for a number of years as a frontline staff. I've always been interested in care of the older adult, and particularly in dementia, and I made decision to further my education in relation to gaining more knowledge on dementia and how to support people with same. I took on part of the course was to implement a practice change, so I did the Dementia Champions one module course over a number of months in DCU. And part of it was to implement a change in practice. And at the time I was supporting an individual who was living with dementia and who was significantly challenged how it was impacting on his life, and also the staff team that were supporting him were challenged as to how best to support him. In the plan, I looked at it in a holistic manner and incorporated all aspects of his care, from health to well-being to his social activities, interactions, and how, because the individual was non-verbal, how he would communicate if things weren't being done in the way he liked it. So it was really important for it to be stipulated out exactly how he'd like his care and that to be done. This in turn, the plan was actually very successful. It obviously wasn't one from the off. We had to review it and amend it, and as things changed, but it proved that once you put something in place and to support an individual correctly, it empowers them. And we learned as we went along. He was able to communicate, obviously non-verbally, but letting us know when things were right and when things weren't so right for him. Sorry, I had to keep notes because I'd lose track. During my time as the staff nurse, I had done, as I said, Dementia Champions course, which actually was the catalyst for me to go on and study further in relation to dementia. So, and I took on board doing a part-time masters in dementia in TCD. Meeting the change needs. In 2015, my role as a frontline staff nurse in St Patrick's changed somewhat, and I was given the remit to help support with the changing needs that were needed in practice in line with HICWA standards. So, one of the first things I was asked to look at was in relation to people who had received a diagnosis of dementia and how that was arrived at. I started to develop a cognition monitoring piece. It was a very valid question because at the time people were receiving diagnoses, but there was no formal pathway on how that decision was arrived at, which wasn't, it was very difficult then when you were going back, like on previous years, and the information wasn't there, and like how was this decision made? I utilised my learning skills that I had learned here in WID and all the training I had, and started gathering collateral information from the number of healthcare plans that I had been asked to review and to find out more. I started to develop, I could see that there was issues in relation to that there was no set standard template as to how to follow through, and so I developed a cognition monitoring programme with the service for people we supported over the age of 35, and this was rolled out every year. This involved creating a document to record the adaptive functions, self-help skills, etc., to be tailored to support many individuals who required it. I went on to further develop a memory clinic for the service with a pathway and how the service supported individuals who may present with cognitive issues or decline. The pathway highlighted how individuals were supported with initial screens, a screener to flag what the concerns were, and then outlined the diagnostic investigations involved and how the diagnosis was arrived at. This developed within a 4-month period, and in December 2015, the whole cognitive monitoring and care pathway was nominated for a national award with the Dementia Innovation Awards. It was the first memory clinic specific for people in ID in the South East at the time. In addition, I developed advanced end-of-life care pathway for the service, which again outlined how we recognised when an individual was approaching this phase in their life. Again, how do we know when somebody has become palliative, and how do we recognise that this incorporate, and how the service supported the individual when this was recognised. This incorporated a tailored creative care plan template, again, which incorporated the 9 key elements of palliative care, and was completed to meet the person's needs as they progressed. So it changed and developed with the person. So we had a template, we had the 9 key areas, and as the person progressed, we updated the information. My vision was to support the individual to live their fullest on their terms, and it required imagination, creativity, and the ability to think outside the box to meet the needs. I developed a reputation for the ability to problem solve and create solutions. I became involved with multiple practice developments throughout the service, and I went on to develop protocols and policies in relation to pain management and assessments and care planning, fault assessment pathway, head injury protocol and care pathway, epilepsy support protocol and procedures for accessing the community. That was in order to support people who had significant epilepsy, and how they could access community if nurses weren't available, but that the individual would be perfectly safe. I also was involved in the medicine policy for the service. And out of my, sorry, don't worry. Thanks, Millie. Out of my master's research, I developed a one-day Category 1 approved NIMI course on dementia assessment, diagnostic overshadowing care delivery, entitled I'm Right Here, and that again was ID specific. At the end of, I had the opportunity to work as a clinical nurse specialist in age-related care. The area of specialism and advanced nurse practitioner had always been of interest to me, and the opportunity came to work as a clinical nurse specialist in Limerick. I applied and was successful in the area. I suppose the catalyst to change, as I said, was that I was always more drawn to specialism, say, than doing the management piece. The service is quite large and integrated. It supported over 340 individuals within the service. My role was newly developed, so there was no there had been nobody there prior to me. This role grew out of a service need that was recognised that as people aged, they needed more additional support. The service was divided into 2 areas, integrated and within the community, and my remit was for the whole service and to develop the age-related service in line with best practice. I suppose the key areas that I was involved, can you see? Yeah. In CNS age-related care was recognising the change in needs within the population. I was able to create a culture of possibility, and utilising all my knowledge and skill base, began to raise the standards of care. The role was challenging and loved, and had the ability to meet these challenges. The role of a CNS gave me the opportunity to change discourses around intellectual disability, and I achieved this through advocating for individuals and focusing on their needs. People with intellectual disability often endure age-related health issues at an earlier stage than their peers in the general population, and when they access acute settings, they don't always have like a positive experience or a positive outcome per se, because at times it can be an issue where the doctor and one of the speakers spoke earlier about this paternalistic view by doctors that, you know, they're not able, or, you know, they can't make that decision themselves. And in my role as a CNS, it was developing that communication piece with the acute services and in the hospitals and with the primary care team. Enhancing communication links was, so part of it was to try and develop links with the acute services to enhance the outcomes for the people that we supported. So we used a template of information of how, like, if somebody was admitted into hospital, I was notified, and the person's individual MDT members are also. We liaised, or we would go in and meet with the medical team, and we would discuss the care, obviously in consultation with the individual who had been admitted, and discuss and formulate a plan going forward, and to put in place any supports the individual may need once out on discharge. As I said, the service was divided into two, so integrated services had nursing support where community services didn't have nursing support. So at times we might need to, somebody might need to convalesce in a nursing home for a number of weeks depending on the condition or treatment that they required. Follow-up, we would support the individual then to link with their own general practitioner within a 72-hour period of discharge. This again brought the person back into the loop with their own GP and brought them up to speed. Because I suppose for us, for me, what I was trying to do was, because often for the people I worked with, their GP was, you know, their number one. They never minded going to see their GP, but once you went into acute settings, it was it was a greater challenge for them. So it was really good to have the GP in the loop and to support the individual. Meeting, yeah, we would schedule meetings then with the other, with the individual and their multidisciplinary team members, and support individuals with follow-up and recommendations. So at the follow-up appointments, and that it was really important. I know I've waffled on quite a bit there, but it's the fact that it went from implementing something like this into the service to support the individuals. It was something that hadn't been happening. They were being told what to do, and there was no discussion or consultation, which isn't right, because everybody is entitled to have their say and to input, you know, their opinion and make choices. And it's not to say that somebody with an intellectual disability can't make a choice or can't give informed consent. It's how we deliver that information and impart it to them. I suppose in light of everything I have done, in light of everything I have done, and there is so much more I could have laid out in I suppose what I want to say is that my training, and from being trained here in WIT as an undergrad, gave me the foundations to want to go out there and fly the flag for the RNID and do the absolute best job I could possibly do. And I feel I did achieve that, because anything I ever created, all the pathways of that were always wrapped around the individuals, not the service. You can move it, and it was trying to, you know, things that I created in one service I could transfer to another. It might take a little bit of tweaking, but not too much, and it worked for them, because it was always person focused. So I started as lecturer here in WIT, really new to this. I don't know if you can't tell. Yeah, I'm just so excited to be here and take up the post. Absolutely thrilled, and I'm really looking forward to where my future goes from here on. Thanks a million, and sorry for the assault on your ears. Thank you.
That was just fabulous, Mary. And you know, what Mary put into action in her work was, I just kept hearing the words, nothing about me without me. But that was Mary's mantra. That's what she did in her service. And well, WIT's gain is their loss, because I'm sure that they will miss you in service. But it's about how we transfer this knowledge that we now have into service to make lives better and richer. And that's why we're all here today. We have a few minutes that I would really just like to ask a very special guest that we have here with us, Mary Davis, who is the CEO of Special Olympics, just to come and to say hello. So we're really, really honoured to have Mary here and to really appreciate her time and her presence. So Mary, if you...
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah sent me a text during the meeting, so would you say a few words? Okay, that's putting you on the spot, but that's good. That's really good. And I am delighted to say a few words, because honestly, I'm just in awe about what I've heard and seen here today. And on the whole journey, you know, coming back here, having worked in the services in St Michael's House in Dublin for a number of years as a volunteer, then with Special Olympics, and then becoming involved working with Special Olympics Ireland and then Europe, and now based in Washington and DC, overseeing the global programme. It's just amazing to see how forward-thinking you are here. And I know you've got amazing leadership in Professor John Wells and Sarah and all the team that spoke and that are here today, showing us what can be done when we put our mind to it, what change can be made, and how no matter what we do, we must always concentrate on the individual needs of the person. And it's just so evident that that strand ran through every single presentation today, from the moment it started with Shannon. Is Shannon gone? Is she still here? She's gone. Quite amazing. And I was chatting to her afterwards because I thought I recognised her, and I said, have you been involved in Special Olympics? And she said, yeah, of course I have. I'm still involved in Special Olympics. And I knew I'd seen her somewhere or other. And I was sorry I missed part of her talk as well, but it was nice to catch up with her and to see how much she benefited from both the programme, the independent learning programme, but also our skills, but also from her involvement in Special Olympics as well. And just listening to all the presentation, Olivia's story was a lovely story, how you started out, how you got involved. You know, you were so deserving of the President's Prize as well, and you'll certainly be a very valuable employee wherever you go to work in the future. And then listening to Teresa and the capacity bill and the changes that need to be made there, and we're not there yet, but thank goodness it's changing. Thank goodness we don't have that old-fashioned mental capacity bill, and that it is changed and more to be done, of course, but at least we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel in relation to that. And honestly, the work that Sinead did in bringing that course, the education course, the Certificate in Skills for Independent Living is actually the name of the CSIL course that they talk about. Acronyms are great, but when you're a visitor, sometimes it's really hard to understand them. And I come from an organisation that's full of acronyms, and I'm constantly saying, please tell me what that means. So that certificate, and the amazing thing about that certificate, and I was talking to Sinead about it, is that it did start in Trinity College, and I know you've expanded and done a lot more, and the national recognition is just fabulous. But it started in Trinity College. But the interesting thing is the funding to start that programme in Trinity College came from Special Olympics Ireland, and it came as a result of a surplus of funding from the organisation of the World Games in 2003. And that provided the first, I think it was $500,000, Sinead, I'm trying to remember back now to that time, to start that programme in Trinity with Fergus Finlay and his wife Frida, who had a daughter Mandy with Down syndrome, and many, many others that were involved in starting the programme. But to see how then it was approached in this way, and really interesting, because in Trinity it's under education, and here it's part of the nursing. And I thought that was great, because the other thing I was saying to somebody, I think Judy or somebody as we were chatting, it's just the expanded role of the nurse now. It's so broad. I mean, much broader than I even knew, and I worked with a lot of people in the nurses in the area of intellectual disability that worked in the services, and like Mary continue to work in the services, many people, but now taking on different roles like you were mentioning when you were chatting to us, and that's a really, really good thing. And that expanded work is really, really going to help the individual with intellectual disability, because they're going to have somebody across a number of, working across a whole range of areas rather than one specific area, and it's going to give them a lot more consistency, I think, in their choices and in their lives, and it's also going to give them trust in the person and getting to know the person, and therefore they'll be able to, I think, talk up and speak an awful lot more. Of course, it is about, all of us are doing the same thing, and it's just so great that Coach is here from Special Olympics Ireland, and hopefully, you know, I know that you have a relationship, and the students here are fantastic in the way that they've always volunteered to work with the Special Olympics in the club settings and in centres and organisations as well. And last night on our way here, we went to see one of the clubs that are set up by Susan McGill, who works in the Brothers of Charity Services, and all her, many, not all, but the majority of her volunteers come from here, from students that are here. And it is when we're all integrated like that, when we all work together. And now the expansion into working with St. John Fisher College, and having Jerry, the president of the college, and Diane here as well, and Anne from the Golisano Foundation, who are already working in that area across so many ways, works with us, with our programming, works with St. John Fisher College, and now this cooperative effort as well. I can only see all of us going from strength to strength, because we are better together. There's an Irish phrase, Ní neart go cúrga céile, and for our visitors that means we're better together, and we are better together, and we can achieve so much. And it's just starting here, and it's just, Sarah, fantastic to see it. I know, Mary, you talked about advocacy. You saw your role as an advocate, as an educator, as a source of knowledge, and you flicked over then so quick that I missed the rest of what you said, which is what I saw on the slides. But I thought, yeah, that's what we're about. But I know when I started in Special Olympics, which was way back in 1978 as a volunteer, we were very much saw ourselves as providing a service for people. And in any of the services, St. Patrick's, Michael's House, Brothers Charity, any of them, what do we do? What do we say we are? We say we're service providers. We provide a service. And yes, we do. But as we became more sophisticated in Special Olympics and progressed in terms of what we're doing, we now see ourselves as an organisation where we learn from the athletes that are involved in the Special Olympics programme, where they're the leaders of the organisation, not us. They're the advocates, they're the spokespersons, and they're the people that can teach other people about acceptance and respect and dignity and inclusion. And it's not so much about concentrating on the percentage of people in the world with intellectual disability, should be our main focus, but it should be concentrating on the other 97 or 98% of the population that do not understand. And how do we reach that population to have them be more accepting, more understanding, and to change their mindsets. And we do an awful lot of work now in the US and in many other countries around the world on inclusive education and going into schools through the power of sport and play, teaching young people to understand difference and to be more accepting, because these are the people of the future that will go into influential positions as nurses, as teachers, as politicians, whatever, wherever their path brings them. And hopefully they will retain and bring that message of inclusion with them. So an awful lot of our focus now is based on it's based on the rest of the population and how we can change their mindsets through, of course, what is our core sport. And there's no better way to do it than playing together, learning together, activating together, and then just saying yes to building a more inclusive community and society. It's great that Alicia here, she has just joined us in the organisation. She's a doctor, a paediatrician, as she said, and it's great to have that. Thanks again to Anne and the Golisano Foundation to have that sort of expertise on our team now, because she can bring another breadth of knowledge. So look, thank you all so much. It's a real learning experience to come and spend some time here with everybody and to learn what you're doing. And I hope that the outcome of this will be that we will build much more partnerships. And sometimes I'm skeptical of partnerships, because unless they develop into something that's real, you sort of think, there's no point signing a piece of paper for the sake of ticking a box. We have to make change happen, and we have to change society and empower our people with intellectual disability. First, that they can be the best that they can be. We all can be the best we can be, but that they can inspire others to be more inclusive in their thoughts and actions and their behaviours particularly. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that. And, on behalf of everybody here, we salute you and Special Olympics, International and Ireland, for all that you do for our people, because it really is very important, and we've made new friends, and that is for sure, and we will be doing more and including more as we go. So that's what it's about. Lovely to have a little chat. We're brilliant on time, so that's good, because we'll probably need to make up a few things at the end. So I'm just going to introduce Anne-Marie O'Connor, who's the chair of the afternoon session. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Anne-Marie O'Connor. I'm a clinical nurse manager with the Brothers of Charity Services here in Waterford. Our first speaker is going to be Professor John Nolan. Professor John Nolan is the founder and principal investigator of the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland. His research group studies the role of nutrition for vision and the prevention of blindness, and more recently the role of nutrition in brain health and cognitive function, with a focus on Alzheimer's disease. He is a previous recipient of a European Research Council starting grant to the value of 1.5 million to study the impact of nutritional supplementation on visual function. These trials identified how targeted supplementation can improve visual function for the general population and for patients with age-related macular degeneration. He has published over 100 peer-reviewed scientific papers and has a H-index of 41. He is currently chair of the International Brain and Ocular Nutrition Conference. Okay, John.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the wonderful invitation to participate at this very special event. Hopefully over the next 15 minutes I'll be able to give you some information that's new and maybe a little bit provocative. I'll start my provocativeness by saying I think giving advice to eat healthy and be healthy is kind of useless, because we don't know how to comply to such a life. And this becomes more of a challenge, of course, when we get older and when we have disabilities and when we have an ageing population. So I really feel that we're in a time of change where direction and targeting nutrition has a major role to play if we are to in any way impact on the challenges that ageing presents. So we want to celebrate ageing, but it's only successful if we keep our function into age. So when I talk about nutrition, I'm very interested in not just saying let's eat fruits and vegetables because they're good for us. It's why are they good for us? What's in them that works in the cell that gives me my vision in the retina? What's in them that keeps my brain healthy for longer, and so on? So that's really what our research is about. It's about identifying targets around nutrition and specific components of nutrition that are really good for society. And our methodology, how do we test this? We work with humans, which is very challenging, of course. But we have a multidisciplinary team. We're based at the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland, which is just across the way there. We're delighted to be part of the School of Health Science, where we conduct all our research. So, unlike our lunch, this is, although the blahs were wonderful, I did have one, but this is what we should be eating. We should be eating foods that are colourful. And the beautiful colour that we see in these foods are because of compounds called carotenoids. And carotenoids are very interesting compounds. There's 700 of them in nature. There's about 50 in a typical Western diet. We have about 22 in our taxi system, our blood system. And remarkably, there's only 3 of them that are working at the macula. The macula is that centre part of the back of the eye. It's just that 4% of the retina that gives us 90% of our vision. So all of my research has been studying 3 molecules in a very tiny part of the retina. Now, what's really important about these nutrients, and this is what I mean about the recommendation of eating well and eating healthy, is even the healthy individual in this room, even the marathon runner and the person that prepares the lunch and tries to eat healthy at night time, that individual is suboptimal in these nutrients insofar as the amount that we need to give our cells the amount that they need to perform well. So now we have a massive problem. So the question is, what do we do about it? Why is this happening? The 3 molecules that I've been studying are lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. Now, you'll never remember those names again. That's fine. Our work at the NRCI is very well known because we identified that mesozeaxanthin part of the pigment that's crucially important. And in a disease called age-related macular degeneration, which I'm sure you've come across in your work, patients are deficient in this particular compound. And essentially our research has been able to identify how we can source that, how we can provide it, how we can fix the problem essentially, and what does that mean for vision. And I've explained this bit already, that we have this biological selectivity from nature, 700 in nature, 50 in the diet, and then we focus in on these targets, these 3 nutrients in the eye. And by mistake almost, we discovered that they're not just in the retina, they're actually living and working and doing a very important job for us in the human brain as well. So that's really important. And this has implications for diseases like Alzheimer's disease, but really the work shows us that just with macular degeneration, when we want to do business with Alzheimer's disease, it's this primary care, it's this primary prevention that we can positively impact on this disability. So this is a beautiful image of the back of the eye. That's the macula there, that 4%. This little dip is your fovea, and that yellow equals nutrition. So if you wake up in the morning and eat no fruits and vegetables, you will have none. There are probably people in this room that have no yellow in the back of their eye, and that's a really bad thing, because essentially think of this like sunscreen. We have a deficiency in the sunscreen inside our body, okay? And so that's important. So let's look into the eye. There's your macula. See it here. And this is the part of the eye that we're trying to protect, because if we do that, we can protect 90% of our vision, and we can protect against a disease called macular degeneration. So macular degeneration is this terrible disease that hits us when we're about 60. We lose our central vision, we lose our colour appreciation, we lose our quality of life. It's very, very traumatic. And what I would like to say is that this is a disease that doesn't just happen when we're 60, of course. We don't wake up at 60, 61 and have this chronic age-related disease. It's the cost of doing business with life. Our genetics and how we behaved over our lifestyle, what we ate, did we smoke cigarettes. So there's many risk factors. Just all these diseases have the exact same risk factors, by the way. You'll know that. But then the question is what's modifiable? And nutrition is what's modifiable. Okay, so that's where the opportunity is. And not to get too sciencey, but just I'd like to say to you that, you know, all of these diseases are, as I said, the cost of doing business with life. So what's that? It's a process known as oxidative stress. So as we metabolize oxygen to stay alive, as we're all doing thankfully in this room, the byproduct of that is we produce unstable, unhappy molecules called free radicals. These radicals are missing electrons, and what they like are healthy cells that are working in our body. So they'll take an electron from that healthy cell that's working. But the problem is that that then becomes unstable. So in other words, if we do not have an appropriate antioxidant defense mechanisms, which we can get from nutrition, we potentially have a big problem. So it's when that imbalance happens, we get this oxidative stress attack. And this oxidative stress, by the way, is the trigger for the inflammation that happens inside our body that causes Alzheimer's disease and causes macular degeneration. So the starting point is oxidative stress, and the solution is potentially nutrition. And this, I always like to use this slide because this is actually an image of a truck driver in Florida. And you can see that this side of the face was the side of the face that was exposed to the sun from driving. So there you can see oxidative stress in play in real time in this person's life. And the point is, this is happening inside our body. And the only way we can prevent against that is to have the appropriate nutrition and the appropriate protection to stop against that. And we can do that. Because the carotenoids, these beautiful compounds that give the world its colour, are powerful, powerful antioxidants. They're in plants to make plants healthy. The plants don't care about the humans, but the plants that we eat contain them. And if we contain enough of them, we will have enough in our systems to protect the cells that are giving us our vision and our brain function and so on. Now think about disabilities and think about Alzheimer's for a second and think about the difficulties of that patient or those patients consuming the foods that we know they should eat. They simply can't and they simply don't. So healthcare has to do something to provide that for them. It's really a no-brainer, no pun intended. In the eye, it's quite unique because, again, you get this sunscreen effect, but you also get this exquisite optical process that's taking place, whereby this yellow pigment is yellow. It filters light at 460 nanometers. So blue light, look at today is a great example. The sky is blue. The reason why the sky is blue is that the visible wavelengths of light are coming down through the ozone and the blue light is being scattered. This happens inside the eye as well. The net result of that is not just this oxidative stress attack, it's bad vision. It's a vision that we accept as our best vision, but what we claimed in our big European grant was we can create a new vision. And we can create a new vision by enhancing nutrition in the eye that's uniquely placed, that has the right antioxidant properties and exquisite optical properties to simply remove that blue light bit at the macula. Net result being we can improve vision for society. This becomes more important, of course, when we go into our later years of life where we have diseases like macular degeneration and so on. So I made the point at the beginning that even the healthy individual is not consuming enough. On average, about 1.5 milligrams per day of these carotenoids. Our dose response bioavailability studies show us that you need upwards of 20 milligrams to give the cells enough to be healthy enough to function enough. So that's the challenge. So we're all behaving and operating here in the suboptimal. So my basic research question was, if we can identify a way to push those nutrients into the adequate and even optimal, we can change function to the same degree and to the same extent in all populations, in all societies, in all disabilities. And we've done numerous studies looking at diet versus supplements. We've partnered with companies across the world that can provide these nutrients. This is a company we work with from Mexico called Industrial Organica, and we use this beautiful flower from Mexico, the marigold flower. And you may see it in the program The Day of the Dead. This is the flower they use for those celebrations. But these beautiful colours are those exact nutrients that I'm talking about. These have been able to be quantified for use. So to test that research question, I'm very proud to say within the School of Health Science, the NRCI has led the way and is leading the way in this research question. And we've been able to bring together unique technologies that allow us work with humans, measure all these variables that I've been speaking about, focus in, look at vision at a super sensitive level, look at cognition and brain disease at a super sensitive level, different to what the ophthalmologist would do or what the geriatrician will do in terms of Alzheimer's disease. We really can spend time with research quantifying wellness and function around wellness in our populations of interest. So we have unique technologies to do that. This is one system we have. NASA has one and we have one. And this has been in space and it's also over there. So that's how sophisticated this technology is. We can look at the 10 layers of the retina. I can quantify the nutrition in the retina. If I give you spinach, I can measure how that changes the pigment in your eye. If I give you a supplement that has high amounts of that, I can absolutely quantify with exact science how much is there. So this is obviously very exciting. And a major discovery that I had, I suppose, as part of my postdoc work was that this is a dip. See, these red lines, they represent dips in pigment, so like a volcano as opposed to a mountain. And that's bad because they have this lack of sunscreen at that part of the eye. We discovered that this was happening in patients with Alzheimer's disease and patients with macular degeneration. And remarkably, we discovered that if we give the central component, this mesozeaxanthin bit, we can make the volcano a typical mountain. And that was a real discovery. And it was that data, in fact, that allowed me to go to Brussels and win that 1.5 million too. Because what I claimed was, we have identified the missing nutrient that if we provide and supplement with, we can create a better vision for society and protect against age-related blindness and age-related dementias and so on. So this is the trial. I won't go into it. We worked with people with the disease and we worked with people like you, a general healthy population, because I believe this research question was so powerful that it wasn't just for disease. And that's the point. Nutrition and optimization of nutrition is not just for when we have the problem. It's in fact the opposite. It's from the cradle to the grave. You just have to look at breast formula, breast milk. The yellow colostrum is yellow because of these carotenoids. And that's nature straight away trying to provide these excellent nutrients to the baby. A mother during pregnancy becomes totally deficient in carotenoids. Why? Because the mother has done her job and nature says, there you go, give it to the baby. And that's why moms can get quite sick during pregnancy. So this is where this research question starts. It is from the cradle to the grave. In the first trial, we were able to improve vision in the healthy population with appropriate supplementation. And in patients with macular degeneration, I'm just quickly going through these slides here because I know I'm short of time. In 32 tests of visual function, everything in these patients where they normally lose their contrast, they lose, have difficulty night driving, they start to lose their central vision. So we measure that in 32 different ways basically, and 24 of them got significantly better over a 2-year intervention period. So we've changed the curve. Instead of these patients getting sick and losing their vision, we've improved it. And so this was a game changer for ophthalmology and has now become standard of care in ophthalmology. And this is all published in a top eye journal. So the point of all this is that protection against disease is icing on the cake, and it's certainly not the cake. Because, you know, if you think about it for a second, we didn't evolve as humans to put this targeted yellow piece of nutrition in the back of the eye to protect against a disease that kind of doesn't matter. It's throughout our lifetime. And if you look at it from a Darwinian perspective, and I've studied the literature on this, you know, the survival, catching the fish versus not catching the fish to stay alive, the subtle differences in performance that we were able to enhance with good nutrition of the eye are quite remarkable. Extend that to today's world, we make Rory McIlroy a better golfer, for example. And actually, you're laughing, but a lot of my work in America would be supporting sports, baseball players, for example, and using nutrition even at that super performance level. And that's really, really exciting. So, and this is the point about this development. And, you know, think about this oxidative stress. You know, we think about it as an aging problem. A new baby's retina has 7 times more oxidative stress than I do today, because it's developing, it's growing, the cells are so There's our baseball friends. And oh yeah, there's pictures from my wife's colostrum. I didn't get ethical permission to put that up, John. I don't care. I think it's very interesting. So yeah. So and there you go. That's the point about the retina and the newborn. I know I'm kind of out of time, am I? I'll keep going a little bit. Have I another few minutes? Yeah. Okay. So the performance in diseased eyes, healthy eyes. The point is, it's not just about stopping this central vision. You know, orange is good sometimes. And I don't think President Trump has a lot of carotenoids. I think that's his choice of skin cream. But this always gets me a laugh, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And again, if you don't like it, I don't really care. I think we should do it. Let's make vision great again. It's going to be huge. The final thing, because I don't want to encroach on your time today. I know you've lots more to say, but you know that's a whistle tour of a research idea that has been very successful. It's mushroomed out into a centre here that's working with function and disabilities across the spectrum. Our work for the future is focused on the brain, and I'll end that slide there, because it was like all good scientific discoveries, when we identified that these nutrients that I'd spent 18 years working with are actually very concentrated in the brain as well. This was this new horizons bit that we stumbled upon. And now we're trying to understand this from a mechanistic point of view. You know, that's always the question. Okay, they're having an effect, and it's the why bit. We know they're anti-inflammatory, we know they're antioxidant, but we think that it's much, much more than that. So we've such a wealth of study and such a wealth of expertise at our centre now, and it's nursing, it's optometry, it's statistics, it's general nutrition, and I'm surrounded every day by brilliant people to do that. So the future and the big study we have, and we have some nurses working with us on this, is we're actually had a discovery in Alzheimer's disease, and again, it wasn't set out, the study wasn't set out to do this, but we were measuring carotenoids, and essentially we identified that patients with Alzheimer's disease are the most deficient in carotenoids than I've ever seen. Now, on one hand, you could say that's because they're not eating any foods. So then the question was, well, if we give them carotenoids, can you fix the problem? We were able to fix the problem, but long story short, when we joined the carotenoids with omega-3 fatty acids, which are again a major component of the brain, the effect was so significant. So it's given us a real platform now, and we're in the middle of a large trial where we're going out to meet patients, and we're working with University Hospital Waterford, Professor Rena Mulcahy and team, and we're approaching 70 participants with Alzheimer's disease. And you know better than me how hard it is to work with people with that type of disability and the life challenge that is. But I have to say, it's given me the most joy as a scientist to get to kind of maybe add a little bit to this disease, and I think that we will with science. And then the important thing is the dissemination, how we can implement that for society, how we can then make government listen and use, and we move away from a stage where all the money is going to treatment and cutting and injecting. Let's get earlier in the equation, because that's where the problems begin, and that's where we can have the most impact. So that's all I have to say. Gaurav Mila Mahakut, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. Next, we have Judy Ryan. Judy is a trained registered nurse in intellectual disability. She has spent time in both Scotland and the UK before returning to work in intellectual disability services here in Ireland. With a career extending across services, practice development and managerial posts, Judy is currently the Director of the Nursing and Midwifery Planning and Development Unit here in the South East. This role involves strategically supporting the profession's development of nursing and midwifery, and Judy is a PhD student in Trinity College Dublin.
Right, thank you very much. Oops, sorry. Thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here today, and really great to hear everything that's happening in the region, and I have very close collaborative working arrangements with WIT and a really great institute with a huge future, and particularly, of course, intellectual disabilities. There's a slight bias there. And just to follow on, it's very hard to follow on from the previous presentation, but just to say, my study is looking at overweight and obesity in older people with an intellectual disability. And it's part of a longitudinal study on ageing and intellectual disability in Ireland. And so it's people over 40 years of age with an intellectual disability. And just to follow on the eye disease, from wave 1, is John still here? From wave 1 to wave 2 of the intellectual disability study on ageing, eye disease doubled from the first wave, and the waves are collected, the data are collected every 2 years, and that's an intellectual disability. So I am sure there's a lot of research that people with an intellectual disability who also suffer a greater incidence of dementia, particularly people with Down syndrome. So I'm sure future waves of your pieces of your research might include people with an intellectual disability. So I'm really just going to give a very brief overview of what I'm doing in the research, and it's looking at overweight and obesity, just to provide a context, to contextualise the study, and to look at older people with an intellectual disability as weight poses a challenge for them over time. So if we look at overweight and obesity in general, we know that international evidence which shows that increased weight, it presents as the most prominent contemporary global health care challenge. It's a health challenge for the general population, let alone people with an intellectual disability. And it is the 5th principal cause of death. So it causes death. It's something that's unnecessary and preventable, and causes premature death. So a real problem for people with an intellectual disability, as well as the general population. And estimated figures will show that there's about 1.9 billion adults overweight and 650 million obese. So it's really quite a pressing 21st century problem. And we do know from the literature that it's more pervasive in intellectual disability. Sorry, no. So if we look at the literature on overweight and obesity and what it actually tells us, if we know that, and it's a great news story, that people with an intellectual disability are living longer. So as they're living longer, they're developing illnesses of advanced age, which really they never lived long enough in order to develop these illnesses associated with advanced aging. And overweight and obesity, it's a secondary health condition. So in addition to the advanced ageing, which is a great news story, we do know that people with an intellectual disability present with greater health challenges than the general population. They have more comorbidities than the average person, and experience poor health outcomes. And these poor health outcomes are influenced by many factors, but something really to be concerned, and always for me, is that it causes premature death. So we have a great population of people who are ageing, and we have a really great news story. We have children living with quite complex disabilities because of advances in healthcare. So we have a very bright future for people with an intellectual disability, but it will be marred if we don't recognise and address overweight and obesity, which will cause them premature death. So my study is situated in the Intellectual Disability Supplement to the Irish Longitudinal Study, or IDS Tilda. And this is a longitudinal study which I'm sure most people have probably heard about, but I'll just reiterate it. It's a longitudinal study looking at people with an intellectual disability age 40 and over in Ireland, and it involves a representative sample of over 750 people with an intellectual disability living in Ireland across that age range, and people with an intellectual disability themselves are active participants in the research study. There have been 3 waves to date, and the 4th wave is currently underway. So data is collected from lots of different, across the lots of different aspects of the person's life. So my research is looking at data that's collated within IDS Tilda. Sorry, let's go back. Just this is a conceptual framework for Tilda. And if you're looking at overweight and obesity, it's really, for me, it's a fantastic conceptual framework to be looking at weight, because it's influenced by so many factors. There isn't any area there that that overweight and obesity couldn't sit with or influence. My problem is honing myself in to look at particular pieces and not everything. So in wave 2 of the study, where my research is situated, a physical health fair was carried out with over 500 participants by one trained nurse. So participants either self-reported, there was a proxy reporter where somebody reported for them, or it was a participation between the proxy and the individual themselves. And within that health fair, objective measurements for weight were measured, and behavioural health was looked at in relation to diet and nutrition. So if we look at obesity itself, then that's just where the study is situated. If we look at obesity itself, the World Health Organization defined it as where abnormal or excess fat is accumulated. So where the body hosts over 20% of its body weight is fat. So in Ireland, the World Health Organization identified that Ireland was said to be the most obese country in Europe, and that was really quite alarming. That was 2010, I think. So quite alarming for Ireland. So I'm trying to understand the unique causes and contributions for overweight and obesity in people with an intellectual disability. We have a national strategy in Ireland for intellectual disability, and within that strategy it is recognised that we need to look at the unique features that present as a challenge for people with an intellectual disability. So the parameters for measuring the overweight and obesity are body mass index and waist circumference. And body mass index across the literature is a measure that's used universally. However, it is limiting in that it doesn't consider the physical disability or the muscle mass that somebody might have. So also included in IDS Tilda was waist circumference. And we know that we're learning more now about the fat around the waist and the problem that presents for people. So the waist circumference was also measured, and we use World Health Organization cutoffs for those measures. So if we look at the objective measurements then across the 3 waves of the study, now I'm taking my data from wave 2 for a particular reason because it was objectively measured. In wave 2, people self-reported, and that was based on the body mass index, or the height and their weight. And 61% of participants across the study were found to be overweight and obese, and that had risen to 66.7% in wave 2. So that's objectively measured levels of overweight and obesity. And then that has subsequently risen to 79.7% in wave 3. So you can see as the person ages, their weight appears to be increasing with that increase in weight. Yeah, they were just the measures that we used. So, sorry, pressing the wrong button. If we look at the combined prevalence for overweight and obesity, yeah. 2 out of 3 older people with an intellectual disability. If we look at that as a representative sample of people from Ireland, 2 out of 3 people are overweight or obese. So that's really quite significant for this population if you consider that they will suffer more with chronic health conditions and they'll die younger. So really something that I think we need to be quite alarmed about. Looking at what are some of the outcomes, or what are some of the consequences of this, we looked at chronic health conditions of that proportion of people who were overweight and obese, the 2 out of 3 within the study, we looked at the chronic health conditions that they had also suffered with, and what were the predominant chronic health conditions. So within the IDS Tilda study, they're collated according to the systems of the body. So if we looked at the chronic health conditions within IDS tilde, we can see from here that of those who were overweight and obese, respiratory illness is the predominant challenge. And in some ways that's maybe not surprising. If people are overweight, they have difficulty breathing. If they're overweight, they might have difficulty moving. So you move less, your weight increases, and your respiratory function decreases. And we also know that if we have an ageing population, there are particular difficulties around loss of swallow, particularly for maybe people with dementia, for example. We also know from other data that's held within our own health service here that the hospitals collate on the type of things that people with an intellectual disability are being admitted to hospital for. The predominant rationale for admission is respiratory illness. So not surprising that we found it within IDS tilde. But significantly, mental health issues were also featured very predominantly for people with an intellectual disability. Now, this does correlate with overweight and obesity in the general population, but it's again higher and that's self-reported mental health problems. So it's people themselves with an intellectual disability reporting a mental health issue, which is really quite concerning because again, overweight and obesity is a preventable condition. A cardiovascular disease, a metabolic disease also featured. Now, some of these are issues or challenges for the general population, but the percentages are no way as high as they are for people with an intellectual disability or the multiples of conditions that people present with. So just again to give us a kind of a general sense of the profile of those who are overweight and obese. The real risk factor and learning for me was women. It's a real problem for women, and it's a problem for women who are of menopausal age, so that 50 to 64-year-old cohort, who have a moderate level of intellectual disability. So these are people who live in community services, access community supports, you hope living good independent lives, and who live also in community group homes. So they have a moderate intellectual disability living in a community group home. And if we look at the policy context within Ireland, where we've thankfully closed most congregation settings now, so we've really worked hard to support people to live in ordinary lives in ordinary communities. And to me, if I look at the data, with that it brings some challenges, because within IDS tilde we also have data on what people do activity-wise, so if they're in employment or what do they do during the day. So a lot of social activities relate to going out for a coffee or going out for something to eat. So that in itself brings a challenge. You're trying to encourage people to socialise or improve somebody's social existence. But if we do that around food, then the food becomes a problem. So that's a difficult one. But the evidence within the study is that this female population who are menopausal are really most at risk. So when I looked at that cohort of women, there were 350 women who were menopausal within the study. So they experienced menopause earlier than the general population. The average age was 47, and it's just over 50 for the general population. So up to 75% of them had gone through the menopause, and of that percentage, 74.9% had a body mass index 29, so that 0.9, so that put them in the overweight obese category. So most of the women within this study, so most women menopausal age in Ireland with an intellectual disability from a representative sample study are overweight and obese, which is really not good. So when you looked at the waist circumference then, because we know it's that middle fat that's a problem for all of us women, 82% of those who had experienced the menopause had a waist circumference of greater than 88%. So that put them at risk, substantial risk of obesity-related metabolic conditions. So a real risk to this female population. Again, looking at the waist circumference and the chronic health conditions that these women experience, musculoskeletal disorders were a problem. Again, mental health features really very strongly for these women, as does respiratory illness and neurological illness. So the musculoskeletal conditions are, osteoporosis, arthritis, those type of probably physically debilitating conditions. So if you're physically unwell, maybe you stop exercising, it might be a barrier to activity, and then that barrier to activity doesn't help your weight problem. So we need to overcome or figure out other ways of supporting people to manage these. So again, the living circumstances of those women were living in a community group home. So that is something that we really need to bear in mind. How are we supporting people to live well within those community group homes and live ordinary lives in ordinary places? So I suppose just to finish off, it's only really a small snapshot. I'm currently looking at all the data around nutrition, so the type of diets that people have, the types of food, the food groups, and we know from our initial scope of that data that things like fish is almost non-existent in people's diet. We also know activity levels, less than 2% engage in vigorous physical activity. So that's activity that you'd work up a sweat. So less than 2% of the total population of both males and females. So we can see why it's almost that we shouldn't be surprised that people are overweight and obese. So it's great that people from Special Olympics are here, because they're trying to counteract that challenge. So I suppose for me, it's just getting the message out there around this really significant issue. And again, it's just to remind people that people with an intellectual disability will die younger, and they will experience chronic ill health as they age if we don't tackle it. But I suppose really the work needs to be done when people are very young, in order that they don't get to this stage. And they're just people to acknowledge, because I am part of the wider IDS Tilda study. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Our next speaker is a colleague of mine, Orla Slattery, chairperson of the Human Rights Committee with the Brothers of Charity Services Ireland. Orla trained as a registered nurse in intellectual disability as well, and has worked as a nurse supporting people with an intellectual disability for over 25 years. Orla is currently working as a service manager with Brothers of Charity Services Ireland and is based in Cashel, County Tipperary. She oversees a number of day and residential services for adults with intellectual disabilities. The organisation offers services and supports to enable each person to positively engage in the social and economic life of their local communities, and in doing so develop a range of relationships which enhance their quality of life. Each person supported by the service is recognised as an individual, an equal citizen with equal rights. Orla is currently the chairperson of the Human Rights Committee in the South East for the Brothers of Charity Services, the purpose of which is to fulfil the Brothers of Charity Services commitment to uphold the rights of all individuals supported by the service. Orla.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Oh, I'll go with that probably anyway. Cheers, thanks a million. Hi, Orla Slattery, as I said, chairperson of the Human Rights Committee within the Brothers of Charity Services. So today I just want to give you a bit of oversight of what we do as a committee and how we promote human rights within the services for the people that are supported. So I suppose, what are human rights? They're universally agreed basic standards and ensure that everyone is treated fairly with respect and dignity within the services. Sorry now. They're inherent to all persons regardless of discrimination and usually set out in law. So who are human rights for? Sorry, I'll go from that one. So who are human rights for everyone? They're universal and they're for everyone. Central to the concept is the respect for life and dignity of every person, regardless of whether they have a disability or not. So the human rights-based approach, the Brothers of Charity Services commit to taking the human rights-based approach to the services and supports we give to the people that we're supporting. So we're committed to respecting, protecting and fulfilling the rights of those people who look to us for services and supports. Human rights supports are in place within the Brothers of Charity Services. And how do we do this and promote human rights? So the Brothers of Charity Services developed a Charter of Human Rights in 2005 nationally. We have a complaints procedure, I'm not happy, and this is an independent complaints procedure for all individuals supported within the service so that they can make a complaint independently to a social worker without the knowledge or support of their support staff, so they can do it independently. So we promote people, if they have a problem, to come to us and hopefully deal with it and listen to the individual. We have a policy on human rights which was developed in 2010, which has been updated since. We have the procedure, this outlines the procedures for the operation of the Human Rights Committee, which we'll go into later. We provide training and support for all staff and also for the people that are supported within the services, because it's important for the people supported to know what their rights are and to know that there is a procedure that they can go to promote their rights. We have individual rights assessment forms, and these are completed with key workers with people supported within the services on a yearly basis, and they're updated yearly. So this is to ensure that everyone's rights, everyone has the rights and any restrictions in place are limited. We also promote advocacy throughout the services, and we have a person-centred approach through personal outcome measures and PCP process. So the Charter of Human Rights, as I said, the original charter was in 2005, and this looked at people within the services supported, said we want the right to have good support to do the things we want to do and to access our rights and entitlements. And I suppose some of the rights then that people wanted, there's a number, and we have a poster, and there's a number of different rights. They wanted the right to work, they wanted the right to live as independently lives as possible, they wanted choices within their day-to-day, they wanted more money management, they want the right to be able to complain, they wanted the right to be listened to, so they wanted the same rights that are there for you and me, and importantly as well, they wanted the right to education, to be able to access education, and to also be able to access employment. And there's a long list of them. So people also said that they wanted the opportunity to take risks so we can grow and develop as human beings. And I suppose traditionally as services, in the ID services, we would have been overprotective, and we would have had the medical model, as we said this morning, we would have tried to fix the problem. So now we encourage people to grow and develop, and to express their rights and to take risks. And I suppose before we would, as I said, we would have been overprotective. Now we encourage people to take risks. Sometimes they'll succeed with them, sometimes they might fail, but at least we're supporting people to take those risks. So the policy on human rights then was developed, and the purpose of the policy is to outline our approach as a service to fulfilling our commitment to uphold the rights of all individuals who use the services. And the policy principles then outlined in the policy is to access to education and training and information on rights. So we provide, as I said, rights training for all, for both staff and people supported within the services. People want the right to make choices and decisions and to allow people these rights to make their own choices and decisions. And this is done again through the personal outcome measures, through person-centred planning, and through circular supports with individuals. If there is any restrictions in place, they must be seen as temporary, and all restrictions should be the least restrictive as possible. So if a restriction has to be put in, they should be the least restrictive practice as possible. Due process, which we'll go through later, how due process, and there should also be individual rights assessment and review for each individual. As I said, this should be reviewed on an annual basis for each individual. So the implementation of this policy then, how do we ensure that the policy is implemented? We've the individual rights assessment, and we also have the the Human Rights Committee. So the procedures then for the operation of the committee. What is the purpose of having a Human Rights Committee? So we're an advisory role on matters pertaining to human rights. We're an independent group that ensures due process has been followed if rights are restricted. So a certain amount of rights are in restrictions are in place within the organisation, unfortunately, but we're ensuring that due process has been followed and best practice is in place. We're also a role in advocating within the organisation for increased understanding of human rights among staff and people using the services. So the function of the Rights Committee. We examine the types of restrictions that are imposed within the services. consider whether due process was followed in imposing the rights restrictions, so make sure the process has been followed. I suppose I as a staff member can't put in a restriction in place of my own accord. I have a process that I have to follow. And ensure that any restrictions that are in place are fair and not over-restrictive, and that all alternatives are considered. So we ensure when we are looking at restrictions that are in place that they are the least restrictive, and that staff have gone through all the other processes before they've got to the practice of having to put in a restriction. Ensure that restrictions are reviewed and efforts are made to reduce or remove the restriction. And I'm glad to say over the years when this was first implemented, restrictions have greatly decreased within our services. As I said it before, we would have been overprotective maybe in money management, and that we would have looked after people, we would have kept them safe. Now people are more free, there's no restrictions. You know, the staff are allowing people are allowed now have their own access to their bank accounts, they have their own bank cards, they're accessing facilities in their community, and they're allowed to take those risks.
Sorry, Orla. So
Yeah.
what would a restrictive practice, an example?
I'll go through it at the end. I have a few examples of the types of restrictions that come into the committee for review. So prior to imposing any restriction, and this is the due process, so we look for information on the reason why the restriction is in place and what alternatives have been considered. Consent to the restriction. Has consent been given by the individual and their family to the restriction? Is the person aware? Capacity to understand and to consent. So we ensure that every effort has been made to sit down with the individual, explain why the restriction is in place, and go through the process. And all, you know, you might have to use PECS, you might have to use law, you know, other alternatives of communication to ensure that the person has the best understanding that a restriction is in place, and most importantly, why. We have a duty of care for the safety of individuals, and sometimes restrictions come in and therefore to uphold health and safety within the workplace. And then we look at opportunity plus growth versus fear of the risk. So if there is a risk assessment is completed, we look at the risk and try and minimise the risk. So I suppose who do referrals then to the committee come in from? People using this service, staff, family members, circular supports, advocates, members of the public, as a result of rights assessments, as a result of restrictions imposed, and through advocacy meetings. And I suppose we're trying to constantly encourage people supported within the services to make referrals to the Human Rights Committee themselves. The majority of referrals that have come into the Human Rights Committee are through staff members, but at least they are coming into us. And through the complaints process. So sometimes if someone has made a complaint, maybe through the I'm not happy, a referral might come in through the social worker to say that this person feels that they're being restricted, and we'll review the restriction. So restrictions related to behaviour support plans, health and safety and safeguarding client protection, they must be notified immediately to the Human Rights Committee. So restrictions might come in from a management monitoring team through safeguarding, and they have to be notified immediately. So the designated officer within the services, the principal social worker, often refers in restrictions that have been put in place for management monitoring, safeguarding and client protection. So the committee, who makes up the committee then, I'm the chairperson. I was initially a member of the committee, and 2 years ago the chairperson stepped down, Mary Carthy, and I took over as chairperson. We have an external member then from the Waterford Youth Arts. We've external member from, she's a disability manager with the HSE, former disability manager with the HSE. We've a regional manager of MS Ireland. We've parents and advocate. We've people supported within the services around the committee, which is very important. We've principal social worker, we've frontline staff, and we've admin support. So we try and get as much diversity within the committee as possible, so that you're getting views, points from all, because often things come up that are up for discussion, and everyone will have their own, you know, from their own background, will have a good say on it. Then at the end of it all, there's an appeals process. So if a restriction is in place and the Human Rights Committee uphold it, it's not law. It doesn't mean that it has to stay in place. People can appeal the restriction, and they can make it to the Director of Services, Julie Kelly, or they can make it actually to the Ombudsman or to the HSE. But generally, the practice, if a restriction comes in and it's upheld in health and safety, we will work as much as we can with the individual and their family of why the restriction is in place. And I suppose what's really important is if a restriction is in place, our goal is to take away that restriction. So, I mean, traditionally I'm within the services years, different services, and, you know, before I would have went into work in a house and you might say, why is that in place? And people go, I don't know, because it's always been there. So gone are those days. Now people are answerable. If a restriction is in place now, it's in there for a reason. It has to be the least restrictive practice, and our goal is to remove that restriction. So I suppose some examples then of restrictions and referrals that come into the committee. I suppose one good thing, the Charter, when the Charter was commenced in 2005, the rights to work, people wanted the right to manage their own money before the committee was formed. Staff started working with that through the through circular support meetings that with individuals to make them more independent, and thankfully within the services now people, I would hope, are as independent as possible in, you know, and have much more control over their lives and what they do in their lives. And it's all about, as we said this morning, it's come up, everyone talking is about person-centeredness. So it's about that person being able to give that person choices within their lives, to make those choices. As I said, sometimes they'll fail, sometimes they'll succeed, more often than not they'll succeed. We had a gentleman in my service area that just before Christmas he resigned from the services after 30 years because he always wanted the right to work, and he got a job in Abbott full-time just before Christmas. So he resigned after 30 years, which is a really good positive story. So there is really good positives coming out of what we're doing. It's good to see those. They're the good factors where people are, you know, supported to move on with their life through their rights. So I suppose some examples that come in, we have a lot of prescribed supports enablers that come in. So it might be that bed rails are used, there's lap belts on wheelchairs. So they're what we call prescribed support. So they're prescribed from an OT, a physio, some of the multidisciplinary team. And I suppose the reason they come into us is to make sure that they are prescribed. So if a bed rail has been used on a bed, it's there for health and safety purposes and is being prescribed by a professional, rather than putting a bed rail up to make someone's life easier that a person remains in the bed for the evening. So little things like that, they're reviewed then through the multidisciplinary team at local level on a yearly basis. We have money management would have come in more so in the past, is not coming in as much, where people wanted the freedom to manage their own money. And I suppose some of the difficulties that have come in is where families were reluctant to allow them to, you know, have their own bank accounts and have their pass card, and they were worried and stuff. So we work a lot with families and guiding staff on how to support families to come to an area where everyone is happy and satisfied. There was one restriction, like a few restrictions that came in that stood out. Initially we had people that were sharing bedrooms. Thankfully I think everyone, certainly in South Tipperary, now has their own bedroom. So areas like that where people were happy, weren't happy that they had to share bedrooms. We had one gentleman, a restriction came in, there was an alarm on an apartment for one gentleman, and the apartment was on the grounds of a residential house, but separate from it. And I suppose when we queried it with staff, why was the alarm on? It was because of staff's fear at night time that something would happen to him. And when they risk assessed it and looked at it, gradually they were able to remove the alarm, because the alarm was for staff support rather than this gentleman didn't actually need it. And they worked with him then how to call for support if he needed support during the night. We had there was another restriction that had come in, and it was for a gentleman, and who, I suppose, his access to the community was limited, had been restricted, and it was restricted due to thoughts this gentleman said out loud that he had. But when we asked the MDT team to go back and look at it, and for a psychology review and psychiatrist review, and that really these were thoughts the gentleman was having. He had never, you know, the risk of anything happening was actually very low, and when he was reviewed, it was deemed that no, this restriction was unnecessary. Because I mean, if we were all to share our thoughts at times, we might never be allowed out. So unfortunately for this gentleman, he just said them out loud at times. So everyone said, "Oh, we can't let him out; he's a risk." So you know, and that's reduced. And you know, sometimes we put in as staff, you know, for what we think are in the best interests of people, but they're not necessarily. So as staff, it's made us think a lot more about our practices, what we do. And certainly as a services manager now, a lot of things that would have been restrictions in the past, when staff come to me now, I'm able to work through them with staff and, you know, stop it before it ever becomes a restriction in someone's. We had another gentleman that was used to get up during the night. He was in a low support house with a sleepover staff, and he used to raid the fridge at night time, which he was quite happy to do. But then he was put on a swallow care plan, so there was a risk of choking during the night. So we worked with the staff team, and unfortunately the fridge had to be locked because there was large things, and he could have choked. There was a strong possibility that he could have choked. But they got a smaller fridge besides the large fridge, which was left open at night, and it was explained to him there, and his drinks and yogurts and stuff that was safe for him to eat unaccompanied by staff were put in it. So you always have to look at alternatives and see what other alternatives are available for people. We had one gentleman as well that had splints on his arms due to self-injurious behaviour, and through sensory assessments and MDT input and through hard work by staff, they were able to be reduced, and they were long-standing. They'd come with him from the past. So there's lots of things that have come in, and the idea is that it's the least restrictive practice. Other alternatives have been tried, and that they're reduced when possible and taken away. Generally, if restrictions come in and are upheld, they're upheld generally on the grounds of health and safety. So either for the health and safety of the individual, or the health and safety of maybe people that they share a day service or live with. If we're not in agreement with a restriction, we'll automatically write to the services manager and Julie Kelly, the director of services, and say we're not in agreement with a restriction. It should be uplifted immediately, or sometimes we'd ask them for the restriction to remain, but give it immediate consideration that it needs to be reduced if at all possible. And on occasions as well, we've recommended an independent advocate be sought for the individual, so to ensure someone outside of the services to speak with the individual and ensure that their rights are being upheld. So that's sort of some of the examples. Anything else in that? Is that okay? No problem. Cheers. You can work away there and I'll just get it.
Now next we have Mr. Joey Crichton, who has a story to tell us. Now it's via DVD, and he's being supported by Hilary Deely to tell us that story. So now, is it on this, is it?
Hi, I'm Hilary and this is Joey, and we're from the Brothers of Charity here in Waterford, Tory Services. So I've been instructed by Joey now to say a few words, to keep it short, and he just wants to let you know that afterwards, if anybody wants to chat to him, he's brought some photographs and things like that that you might like to speak to him about afterwards. Okay, so just to start and give you a bit of background, Joey's story, as you're about to see, will speak for itself. It's important, in order to keep it in context, it's important to remember that during the first 50 years of Irish independence, tens of thousands of women and children were held in coercive confinement in places such as psychiatric hospitals, mother and baby homes, Magdalen laundries and industrial schools. This is not a past we are proud of, and thankfully times have changed over the past 80 years. It is worth noting that the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, although signed in 2007, was only ratified here in Ireland in 2018. In 2012, new directions launched by the HSE recognised the right of individuals with disabilities to self-direct their own lives. The ethos of our own organisation encompasses this belief. Part of this includes accreditation from CQL, the Council of Quality and Leadership, which was set up in America in the late 1960s as a response to the unacceptable conditions people with disabilities were living in. It is through this CQL process of personal outcome measures that we are here today listening and watching the story Joey has chosen to share with us. We hope you enjoy it, and thank you most sincerely for this opportunity. Thank you.
I'm Hilary. This is my friend Joey. Joey's journey through life has been extraordinary. In 1953, he was born to a single mother. In Ireland then, there was no support. Joey's mother was forced to hand Joey over to the state at 4 months old. His life continued in institutional care. His infant years in Dublin were thought to be happy ones, and various files and photographs suggest that Joey was a happy baby given the circumstances he found himself in. At 4 years of age, he was sent to a children's home down the country, where he remained for 14 years.
So we're going straight to Lucia. Are you excited? Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the building.
We're going to park the car.
I wonder, could we park just there or not? Is that very cheeky?
Be a borderline case, I'd say.
Joey tells many stories of the time spent here. He looks back on much of the time with fond memories and loves to tell various tales of the mischievous pranks many of the boys got up to. During his time at the children's home, Joey worked extremely hard and talks of the various individuals and how hard they worked. Recently, he revisited the home and shared his memories.
Hi, Michael.
Oh, my God.
Hey. Thank you very much for meeting us here today.
Welcome to Lucia.
Thank you.
That's me. That's the fireplace you're thinking of, is it? Yeah.
Because this was the brothers' dining room.
To this day, Joey describes people in terms of good worker or lazy do-nothing, and will let you know how he feels about you on any given day using these terms.
You worked in the main kitchen or in the vegetable kitchen or were you in the break?
Here and the bakery.
And bakery.
And that.
And did you work with vegetables?
Yeah.
And you'd have like full pots of porridge here.
Oh yeah, I imagine.
To serve that many people.
300-400 portions, we get 200 each.
There'd be a lot of spuds to be peeling.
What am I peeling? About 350 lads.
You'd be peeling spuds all day.
50 guys. Yeah. Right. Nice to meet you again.
The church? Yes.
There is no doubt that Joey experienced difficult times, and he talks of the sadness of not having a mother or family. The hard work, the loneliness, and the cruelty of others are all aspects of life spent in institutional care. This was a time when society trusted those caring for our most vulnerable citizens.
That was a prayer for your mummy. That's lovely.
Just 12 o'clock, we're just here.
One of Joey's favourite trips is to Paulstown, where he has a regular massage and gets to chat and spend some time with Carmel.
Hello, Carmen.
Hey, Joey.
Hello.
Welcome. How are you? You're welcome. Great to see you. Well, how you doing, Paul?
Lovely, Carmen. Great to see you again.
Good too. Come on in.
Now.
You know where to go.
You have no idea, Cameron, how much he enjoys coming up
Really?
here. Loves
Really?
it, yeah. Enjoy it now, Joey. Okay, I'll just leave you there for a few minutes.
Yeah. All right,
Okay.
Paul.
Bye.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. My name is Carmen Costello and I'm a kinesiologist and healer. Joey has been coming to me now for a few years and I absolutely love having him. He has progressed so well since he started coming here and he's just a pure joy and I love having him and I think he really loves being here too.
On the way back from Paulstown, Joey's favourite place to stop is the Arboretum. One of Joey's favourite activities is to shop. He loves to shop. Some people shop for shoes or clothes. Joey shops for everything, in particular photo frames.
Joey, one picture like that. Like that. Okay, and you can put it either way, actually. Yeah. I think it looks good. Especially in the gold. What do you think? Yeah. So you're happy with that? Yeah. It looks nice and glittery. That's going to stand out now in the window and just stick a nice photograph like that. Nice day, Joe. Yeah. Present spot. Lovely sunny day. Yeah. Happy? Yeah. Great stuff. Sunny day.
In 1971, just before his 18th birthday, Joey was transferred to an adult centre in Waterford. Once more, it was institutional life. Hard work, good times and bad times. It was here, however, that Joey formed firm friendships and relationships that have stayed with him all his life. Joey often visited a friend's family home in Waterford. He was welcomed on a regular basis. This home became a haven of peace and tranquility for him. He told me once that this house was the first home he had ever been in. Not his home, but an actual family home. He was 19 years of age when he first experienced this. It may have been these visits and also his struggle with not having a mother that encouraged him to reach out and trace his family. In 2013, through the process of person-centred planning, using the personal outcome measures, Joey's priority goal was to do all he could to get some information about his family, in particular his mother. Joey was assisted by those that were close to him, staff and social workers. He knew this may be a difficult and painful process, but was determined to see it through. This is where the ordinary turns into the extraordinary. Joey's family were traced to England with relative ease. They had been aware of his existence all their lives. Their mother had spoken often of their older brother. She believed he had been adopted and lived in America. She was not aware that he had grown up in Ireland in institutional care. In 2014, at 61 years of age, Joey met his family for the first time. While the first meeting was emotional and nerve-wracking for some, not so for Joey. He took it all in his stride with the firm belief that all was going to be fine. How right he was. He is now a very valued, loved and permanent member of the one thing he always wanted, his family. Unfortunately, Joey's mother died several years before his search began, so his dream of meeting her cannot be fulfilled.
Just my family, old thing, and I met my sister, Pony, she do the cooking, and I met my family all in the hotel. I met my family.
What about, did you show Trace all your pictures?
Yeah.
What ones did you show her?
That's one of my, you.
Oh, I think you're the first. I don't believe it for a minute.
Yeah.
I've gone to the back of the queue.
You're not. Don't leave me alone. You're bad.
Joey's room is filled with photographs, and until recently, most of these were of staff. Recently, this has changed. Alongside photographs of staff is an ever-increasing amount of family photographs, just as it should be. Within his family, he is now a brother, an uncle, a nephew, a stepson, and more recently a granduncle. Most importantly of all, however, he belongs. After 63 years, he finally belongs.
And I've come onto my meeting. Look at that book there.
He's just explaining that he's found his family and that he has some photographs here if anybody wanted to see them later. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey, for sharing.
Joey, thank you very much. And thank you very much for that beautiful video. And you're very happy now with your family, Joey?
Yeah.
Good. Good. We're delighted that you could share that with us today. It's really hard, isn't it, to get it together after that? I was fine.
He likes that. More tears.
Oh, Joey. I'm a very good crier.
What's your name?
Sarah. I'm Sarah.
Sarah.
Hi, Joey. I'm delighted to meet you. Thank you very much. She's crying because of your picture. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I have to pretend to be a little bit grown up now. And I look at the pictures after. Okay, so we'll do that together. So we have we've kind of got to the end of a show and a day of what we're about, and I don't think we could have gotten a better start and a better end. There's so much here today, and I have some thank yous that I want to do later on, but I think at this point, I think we really do have to pay testament to Joey and also earlier on this morning to Shannon and to everybody who has an intellectual disability that teaches us. You teach us, Joey, how to behave. And how to mind you and how to care for you in the way that's appropriate for you. And also a massive thank you to everybody here who works in the services, who's done such good work. And you're to be commended, and we would like to thank you all. Thank you very much. We have our last speaker, and we are so honoured and delighted that Maida, I'm looking for, oh, there you are, and, that Maida is here, and I'm going to ask Professor Diane Cooney-Minor to introduce Maida's presentation.
First of all, Joey, my name is Diane. I came all the way from New York to learn from you. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So it's my real honor and pleasure to introduce you my friend and colleague, Dr. Maida Panakar. You can come up? Come up, please. So let me just tell you a little bit about Maida, who's come here to kind of bring our day to the close with a recognition of all that we do individually in our own countries, in our own sphere of influence, as well as all the possibilities that happen when we come together as a global organization and think deeply and meaningfully about the care of individuals from special populations and the role that nurses play in this important work. So Maida is the dean of the School of Nursing at the University of Maribor in Slovenia. I had the great honor of meeting her.
No.
2 p.m.
2 p.m. 2 p.m. is done here.
Okay. Meeting her more than a few years ago when I got invited to join a group that she and Professor Wells have been responsible for creating, which is called UDNA, Understanding Development in Nursing Education.
The last one. Yes, this one, yeah.
Got it? No?
Sorry.
Second one. Second one.
Second one, sorry.
We're just creating a little bit of a drum roll when we don't have drums.
Just to make me nervous.
Maida.
Brilliant.
There you go. There you go. So UDNA,
Excuse me.
UDNA grew from interest in coming together around nursing education in the European Union in response to the Bologna Accord, looking at ways to standardize and create mobility around nursing education across the Union. And I got invited as the American kind of visiting guest because a while ago in the States we were able to accomplish that.
Just I need this one.
Oh, technology.
Why can't we just open this one? I just say start slideshow.
Yeah.
Slideshow, yeah. Yeah.
From the beginning?
Yeah. No, that's the way it's open.
Yeah, that's the way
There
it
you go.
looks, but it's perfect there.
Okay.
You okay?
Yes. No, I'm really nervous.
I know you're next. But just a couple of thoughts, because it's so important for me for me that you get to know this remarkable woman who, I think to yourself, do you remember when you made a decision to go back to school? Remember what that was like? I heard about it today. I remember getting on the train, heading to New York to start my PhD, thinking, oh my God, I'm not smart enough to do this. You know, this is going to be the biggest challenge of my life. And might have made that decision to go all the way from Slovenia to Manchester, England on an airplane on a routine basis, and to do a PhD in nursing, and English is not her mother language. And she persevered through this to be one of the first doctorally prepared nurses in Slovenia, and to open the first PhD program in nursing in Slovenia afterwards. She is a great peacemaker, and so in the times I've been together with her, I've sat at a table with people that she's invited who not so long ago were at war, right? People from Croatia, from Bosnia, from Serbia, Russian colleagues, Polish colleagues, Czech colleagues, Hungarian colleagues. Maida invites everybody to the table because in her great heart, she recognizes that we're stronger together, we're better together, and that despite all the variations there might be in nursing education and our approaches to practice, we share the same passion for our patients and great excitement about our profession. So I invited her to join us in this work and grow our family of nursing colleagues around the globe devoted to the care of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so she agreed today just to come and introduce herself to you, as well as introduce you all to Slovenia and the beginning work that's happening there. So, Doctor, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kulimir. Diane, thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. As you know, I am not from Ireland. I'm from Slovenia. So I hope you will understand my English. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor John Wells for this invitation, as well, and to participate at the part of Golisano Group. I'm extremely honored and pleased to give this presentation about care for children with intellectual disabilities. And I'm sorry, but it's, I don't know what's going on. Yeah?
Can I just silence that?
To give this presentation about care for children with intellectual disabilities. I am not from this field, so I have prepared this presentation with colleagues, co-workers from the faculty. Okay. From the faculty, that is Dominika, Gregor, and Nika. Before I will start with my main presentation, I will briefly introduce the University of Maribor Faculty of Health Sciences. Our university is the second oldest and second largest university in Slovenia, and was founded in 1975. Faculty of Health Sciences, the history and development of our faculty began in 1993 with the foundation of Higher School of Nursing at the University of Maribor. We were the first faculty in Slovenia, first with simulation center, first with master study programs, and first with PhD study program and AMP study program. Education at our faculty is carried out at 3 levels. First level, second and third level. Oops. Oops, sorry. I don't know what to do. So you can see that I am not very good in with computers.
It's moving forward.
It keeps rushing forwards,
yeah,
is it?
it's on a loop.
Shall we?
Is it on a timer? No.
Is it on a timer?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right, let's come out.
Okay.
Let's do it this way. So if you go up to... No? What? I'm going to do it.
May I ask you for help, please?
Right, okay, so look, what we're going to do
Sound off there.
is do it this way.
Just turn the sound off. Just
Sound off.
No, just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, turn that one off. Yeah.
There we go.
Turn that down. Brilliant.
Now, what you can do...
Slideshow and from the beginning.
Try this. Let's see if we can get it this way.
Well, we got fine.
I see what's going on. Okay, don't worry. Let's come out.
Okay.
Can you read off that? No, it's not very good, is it? Right, let's see what we can do.
It's starting to behave a little bit more.
From the beginning, yeah?
Beginning.
And afterwards we will go, we will move in this way, yeah?
Yeah. Just do it there. Click it on there. So just keep your cursor going like that on that little area there. That's it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just keep advancing it to where you were.
I don't know.
No, I do. I do.
Okay.
You talk and I'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
There you go.
You okay?
So, as I mentioned, our study programs are carried out at 3 levels, first, second, and third. And the newest master program is AMP, that is Integrated Care of Chronic Patients. So today, oh my goodness.
Oh, I see what's going on. It's just, yes, that's it.
Just one. Okay.
It's been put on a timer. Can we switch the timer off, Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Switch the timer off.
Sorry. It's a gremlin.
No. No, just go back.
Yeah, to try it that way.
Okay. But I would like to go back.
Yeah. So back.
To the introduction.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No.
Mm-hmm. No. Okay.
And this coming next.
Mm-hmm.
No. So just press that every time you want to say something, please.
Which one?
Yeah.
Okay. In this presentation, I will briefly discuss history and present state of care for children with IDD in Slovenia. I would like also to discuss possibilities and areas of improvement with the help of good practice examples such as Golisano Institute. As you can see in the slide, there is 12 to 13 certain of the population. The incidence of IDD among children is between 3 and 19 years of age. In Slovenia is 20 to 25. The first care for people with ID can be traced in the year 1908. In the next periods, a special unit within the ordinary school was established. In 1929, the National Ag School established a special school in Ljubljana for persons with IDD. And also you can see here the first institute for training work and care that was established in 1953. At present terms, persons with disabilities and persons with intellectual disabilities are not used in Slovene legislation. In everyday conversation, the term invalid and mentally retarded person are still used. More recent legislation referred to persons with special needs, persons with mental disabilities, and persons with disturbance in mental health. In Slovenia, Slovenia was the first republic of Yugoslavia to pass an act relating to social care of people with intellectual and physical disabilities. Slovenian legislation maintains a dual educational system, which means that some students with special needs are separately educated in special schools or institutions, while the others attend regular school along with their peers. The continuum of education programs for children with special needs includes education programs that are separate from peers. It encompasses education programs carried out at home, combined with special and inclusive programs. There are several education centers and services that educate and train children and adolescents with special needs. As I mentioned before, there are some good examples for that educate and train children and adolescents in Slovenia. In Slovenia, there are no formal educational program for nurses working with people with IDD at diploma, master or PhD level. Nurses in practice receive limited knowledge during their education. Deeper knowledge is received by continuous organized professional training and everyday practice skills. Primarily, that the nurses provide basic nursing care. Nurses also work alongside with physiotherapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, etc. And they empower children to maximize their potential for self-care. The level of self-care significantly affects self-image and quality of life. The positive aspects of nurses looking after people with intellectual disabilities are evidently. Another good example of good practice, just a moment. Another example of good practice is Special Olympics Slovenia. Special Olympics Slovenia is one of many programs across Europe or Asia that is making major strides in the area of health. Special Olympics Slovenia participated in Healthy Community project, which was supported by the Golisano Foundation. The main focus was to build a partnership and also to train to maintain the health. There are some major weaknesses that our country needs to address in terms of improving the care of people with IDD. Support in developing educational programs at the bachelor, master and doctoral levels is needed. Additionally, inclusion of IDD in nursing curricula is essential. Nursing in Slovenia needs nursing leaders in this area. Participation at Symposium and an opportunity for us to share the best practice in this special field of nursing. Inclusion of Summer Fellows program would help to develop future nursing leaders in the area of IDD. So I really hope that in the future our collaboration with WIT and John Fisher College will help also to develop education in the field of IDD for the persons with IDD. Thank you for your time, and that's all.
Thank you very much, Magda. So we're at the end of our lovely day, and there's just a few people that I'd just like to thank you before we go. So this day didn't come about seamlessly or easily in lots of ways. So a special word of thanks to Laura Corcoran, who isn't here. She works with Professor John Nolan in the NRIC, who was a great help. Novus Food, who looked after our lovely food for the day. It mightn't have had the carotenoids, but it definitely tasted good to me anyway when I had a Waterford blah with bacon in it. It was very, very nice. Elaine in marketing. And most especially to you, the audience, for coming, for taking time out of your very important work. And I've already thanked you as practitioners and clinicians who work tirelessly for the good of the intellectual disability community and their families, and I really mean that from the heart. Joey, I'll never forget you and your story. Thank you for sharing it with us again, and we'll talk to you in a few minutes on a one-to-one. To Judy Ryan and the... We're going to sit down and we're going to look at it. We are absolutely going to go through that in detail now in 2 minutes. And Judy from the HSE, thank you very much for all of your ongoing support. Last but not least, to the ID team who work tirelessly every day with our students. For Olivia Cusack, Teresa Dowling, you did us proud. Thank you very much. George and Keane, thank you so much for sound and IT support, even though you didn't. And for the photography, George, thank you very much. So last but not least, we just wanted to give a very small presentation to Anne Costello, or Costello, it's on my ear from the American, Anne Costello, as we would say locally, and Diane Cooney-Miner and Jerry. If you just step up, we have a very small thing just that we'd like to give you both, or the three of you. So this is Jerry. I've mixed them up. Your names are on them, but we...
So we got these for you. Sarah got these for you. We thought, what could we give three people who are incredibly proud of their Irish heritage? Constantly emphasise their Irish heritage. We're very proud of their names. So what we got you was your coat of arms. Oh, wow. The Irish coat of arms for your names. So, Costello.
so much.
Cooney.
Oh my goodness.
And last but not least, Rooney.
Did you know you were saying your name wrong all these years?
I do now.
Did you have to come to Ireland?
Yeah, John.
Okay.
Okay, Irish roots. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness.
My pleasure.
What a meaningful gift. A great celebration.
No mistaking me here. That's for sure.
The only thing is you'll all have to wear your glasses to read it. It's tiny, but anyway. So thank you all very much. Continued good work. And we now have time to look at Joey's photographs in more detail. So thank you. That draws our day to a close. Thank you all very much.